Yes, welcome back to another episode of Footy from the Flat. We've got a massive game of Saturday night football, the Sydney Swans versus the Adelaide Crows. A huge amount of jeopardy in this one, particularly for the Swans, who pretty much could be or have their season ended by the Adelaide Crows in this one. It is a massive one. Druzy, what do you think, mate?
Thanks for having me once again. It's good to be here. I have overcome my mysterious injury, but thankfully I'm late back in for this stream.
So we better tell the people. We didn't really announce this, that you were coming back to your own channel, as weird as that sounds. Druzy's an out, you're an in. What's going on? Give us the entire lowdown.
So Druzy does apologise for not being here today. He has a mystery injury. In his own words, it's now has to be referred to as a 3-skin. But anyway, the story with me is I have relocated to Melbourne, and this is my debut on the live stream. You guys have done an amazing job. And frankly, walking into this, it's like a production studio in here. Like, I wish the audience could see what I can see right now. It's very impressive, very intimidating, and it's great to make the debut.
Appreciate that, mate. That are some kind words. And it's been fun. It's been a fun first 10 to 11 weeks of the season. Rogue Riot has just put in the chat, Druzy has put on a few.
Oh. So. All that weight is in the mustache, actually. It adds 5 pounds.
100%, mate. I'm thinking where to start tonight. I mean, we've obviously got tonight's game, which is massive for both clubs. We've also had the mid-season draft during the week. You being a West Coast fan, how did you think that sort of panned out for you overall? I think you took pick 1 and pick 9, I think it was in the end.
That's right, yes. It's nice to have pick 1. This is where West Coast fans come alive. Twice a year we have pick 1. And look, as someone who does follow the draft in general, not as intently as you, Dylan, but I actually do take a bit of a backseat when following the mid-season draft because I find it too hard to be across the prospects, and it all kind of happens, late. When you talk about the national draft, if you're someone like West Coast, you've got 6 to 8 months to prepare for the fact you're probably getting a pretty good pick. So you can do that research. Whereas in this instance, for the mid-season draft, I sort of take it backseat, and I think I put my trust in the recruiters to just take the best guy. And thankfully, we've had some luck in recent mid-season drafts. So Tom McCarthy, his highlights look pretty sexy. A lot of speed, very attacking in the way that he runs as well. He's not afraid to sprint through the corridor, can bounce the footy at top speed. And then, pick 9, had never heard of Jacob Newton. It seems like we like our small forward. So that was a bit of a surprise, but they both look good.
I've had that a little bit with West Coast fans, just on that last point that you make about Jacob Newton being a small forward. You guys... you have a lot of small forwards, and West Coast fans, I've often linked you to certain small forwards, mainly because I see on your list that you have a lot, but not necessarily the quality or the type of small forwards maybe necessarily to kind of push you forward. Do you sort of agree with that? Or are you more in the camp that you think we've got the guys that we need, they just need to be developed?
It's a little bit hard to say because if you'd asked me 4 weeks ago, someone like a Tyler Brockman, I would have thought, does he really have a future at AFL level? But he's put together a 4-week period, admittedly mostly at the centre bounce and stoppages is where he's done his best work. But we're still learning about someone like him. Matt Owies, we really think he could be the next. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought you were being serious then.
Yeah, no. But I mean, I suppose overall there is a bit of a oversupply of small forwards. I would agree that we don't necessarily have any outstanding ones. Liam Ryan's playing a little bit higher up the field now as well. Jamie Cripps out with an injury. So my take on it is that West Coast, particularly under McQualter, probably want to favour a pretty small and fleet-footed forward line.
Yes.
So I think it's starting to manifest in our recruiting. We've also, actually, to add to that, we've got a few next-generation academy talents coming through. Wes Wally this year.
Yes.
Look out for the guy in the red and white sweater and the spectacles. And we've also got, I think, Tyler Williams. Is that his name? I'm not sure. He's a bit of a more speculative one. But
you've also got Kobe Evans.
Yes. Is he a small forward, though?
No. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
you were talking specifically about small forwards.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So there is a bit of a backlog there, but you're right. It's not as though we have 3 or 4 guns and we're just oversupplying it. So
100%. I'm just going to the comments here. Cameron Ross says, try not to get too much Vic bias over there, Jesse.
It's already happening. It's already happening.
It does, doesn't it? You just can't help yourself. It's on. Everything's about Victoria and you just start projecting that back. Rogue Riot says, nice to see you in Melbourne, Jesse. Now let the big bias flow. So that's a pretty topical one. And Isabella Mijatovic says, what did you guys think of the Richmond and Freo game? That's probably a good place that we can actually kick off to here. I only caught the end of that Giants game as I was kind of setting up the stream. I saw that the Tigers got off to an awesome start in that game and then just kind of couldn't hang on. But you'd have to say, just on the scoreboard at least, with the traveling to Sydney for the Richmond Tigers, like a young team, going up there and pushing them all the way. They dominated the first 3 quarters of that game. They'd have to be pretty happy with that.
Oh, absolutely. I can't believe what Richmond has produced this year. They're not even in the conversation for the wooden spoon anymore, I wouldn't have thought, unless something crazy happens. But I think they've clearly elevated themselves outside of the bottom 2 and could easily miss the bottom 4. So I feel a bit silly about that prediction I made at the start of the year where I said they'd win the spoon.
Who didn't, though?
That's true. I suppose in hindsight, though, I don't know about you, but now I look at their team, I think I probably, if I had done a bit more research, I probably should have seen this coming to some extent. They've been more exciting than I expected, perhaps, and some of these guys like Seth Campbell and even some speculative types like Steely Green looks really good as well. So
Hugo Ralph-Smith's had a pretty good month as well.
Yeah,
on the outside,
another great example. But you look, I can't help but compare him to West Coast, and I just look at the 22s, and there's a lot more established players playing well. It's not that West Coast doesn't have any, but the ones they do have are not playing well. So when you look at a midfield of, Nankervis, Hopper, Taranto, I mean, there is no equivalent of that at West Coast. So
yes.
In hindsight, I feel silly that I didn't predict Richmond to finish higher than us. But all in all, what they're doing is very impressive, and Adamuze seems to be on the right track.
It's actually funny because when I did my ladder predictions, I had Richmond last. I had you guys second bottom, and then us third bottom, the Kangaroos. I copped the most in that mix from West Coast fans. That I'd got you guys so wrong.
Yes, we're a very proud bunch at the West Coast Eagles. I don't know if every fan base is like this, but I think it's a product of being a generally successful club. And when we've fallen away, we've come back quickly. So there's always this blind faith that West Coast fans have. And I always have it right before the bounce down of every game. And then it, goes downhill from there. But yeah, I think not to give excuses to West Coast, they're obviously improving very slowly, a few key players out, but I personally always expected another year of I think I had West Coast second last. I think it's probably more Richmond that's surprised me than West Coast disappointing me, to be honest.
Did you think you guys would have more wins at this stage of the season coming in?
I probably would have bet on us having more than one win after 11 games, I think.
Yeah.
But if you'd asked me to point at which ones, I would have
That's
struggled.
more difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
So yeah, all in all, I think 1 in 10 sounds terrible, but I think there has been enough improvement over the last 6 weeks, maybe, since the GWS and Carlton games to make me think we're on the right track, just very far, away from the end of that track, if that makes sense.
For sure. Just doubling back to Richmond there. So they've gone down by 3 points. They kicked 10 goals, 17 to 12 goals, 8 from the Giants. I'm just having a look at a few of the numbers here. So they won the clearances. This has been a story of the Giants season the entire way through. And I just don't know, if they don't correct this, I don't really understand where they're going to be able to be competitive in the final series come that time. 42 clearances to 29 against the Tigers. So you're talking Taranto, Hopper, these sorts of guys. I'm trying to think of the other guys that sort of go a little bit deeper in there. I suppose they're running... Lawler was out, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Thompson Dow, you playing?
Thompson Dow.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. For the Giants, they just haven't been able to get it done. Tom Green just doesn't seem to be that sort of clearance animal that he has been in the last couple of years. Finn Callahan out at the moment. It's a sort of a different type of player, but I don't know. They haven't sort of found the mix this year. They've been outgunned pretty much every week in the clearances. I feel like you don't have to be amazing at clearances, but you have to be able to sort of break even, at least push the team into getting some non-advantageous ones to be able to stay in games. So are they a worry for you?
Yeah, as we were saying before we hit live, I think GWS have a knack of playing seasons in halves a little bit and can be a little bit flighty. I think we've probably given them that leeway because they have shown up in finals. But, that didn't happen last year, but it did happen the year before where they made a prelim and could have easily won the premiership. They were 1 point off beating the Pies. So, and last year I feel... I am going off the memory a little bit, but it certainly wasn't a full season we saw from them. Then it wasn't even full games we saw in the finals.
They're sort of consistently inconsistent, I feel, over the last few years with that. Even that 2023 run, the one where they were outside the top 8, right, made that late charge, played Collingwood in a prelim. Obviously there's big ups and downs across that season.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we can doubt the talent, albeit it is kind of, well, I would say aging. It's probably exaggerating a little bit. I think there's some key players in their aging, but they do also have a really good blend of youth and experience. So it's not really a talent profile thing. To some extent, you'd imagine they get hunted a little bit for the way they play, because they play in such a iconic way almost. The Orange Tsunami and well, when West Coast played them this year, they certainly put us to the sword in that way. But it's that inconsistency we see from them. It just doesn't matter if they come to play in the finals, because we know they're actually a pretty good final side. They just got to qualify.
100%. What's your opinion on their kind of list build? They've obviously gone pretty aggressively high in the draft, taking these guys that are like 175 centimetre small forward types with pretty good picks, I suppose. Whereas other teams, I guess, would go for those like more midfield types, generally speaking, or key position players. They've sort of attacked it a different way. Do you think that's kind of catching up with them at all, or do you think that's still sort of a good model for teams to look at?
I think the proof will be in the pudding. I think it's too early for me to categorically say it's a good or bad strategy. I will agree that, they've traded up to get those picks. They seem to have, and I say seem, I'm pretty sure I've read this, but the Giants sort of have their own board. There's players that are yes or no that they are willing to recruit to their club.
Yep.
Whether or not that's a homesickness thing, it could be, considering the retention issues they've had pretty much since inception. But Phoenix Goldard was clearly such a high priority for them. And James Leake they also took, but they took him a little bit later. But Darcy Jones is another small, hard-running player that they've drafted, and Ollie Hannaford last year. I had a feeling they were going to take him. I did want him for West Coast, but just adds to that dynamic, smaller player that they seem to really value. And it's really hard to argue against it when you consider how good someone like a Darcy Jones is.
100%. Hannaford, I was the same with Hannaford. Like, I would have even though North needed other types of players as well, I would have absolutely loved to get him. They also went for Cody Angove, which was fair. Like, he's playing really well at the moment. He's just got himself into the team. And another one that was probably, like, again, just that sort of smaller, really hard running outside type player. But they like those sorts of types. They like getting those kind of small contest winning guys in front of the ball. So I think, as you said, it will take a little bit to actually kind of see how that's going. Jog On says the man is here for once. Having a bit of a crack at you, Jesse.
That's fair.
Rogue Riot says hoping for a quick recovery for your 3-skin druzy. I don't know what to say about that.
That wasn't a real story, just to clarify. One thing the Giants do as well is they actually give a lot of opportunity, some of these guys. You see at other clubs, sometimes it's hard for young talent to crack games. Like someone like a Collingwood, I suppose they probably haven't had the early picks with the exception of Dacos, but Ed Allen had to bide his time, for instance, and there's other examples. But you've seen the players you just listed there, like James Leake has played, Joe Fonte's played, Cody Angove has played. So for a team that's in the mix for ideally a premiership, considering the list build, they have had a pretty strong philosophy of actually picking kids to give them opportunities in that team.
For sure. And I think actually this season, people have been a little bit flippant with their injuries. Like, they've had a lot of guys out. Even today, like Cal Ward goes down, could be the end of his career, which is unfortunate for him. But across the season, they've had a lot of guys out. Like Finn Callahan's been out for large periods. Jesse Hogan's been out. The string of things kind of been off and on as well. So I don't think they get as much talk about that as, say, like a Sydney do with the injuries that they've got at the moment. And it means they're having to play a lot of these guys. Like, start of the season, Connor Stone was in that team. They sort of like mix and matched him with Joe Fonte, like you said. They've had a lot of like young guys coming through. So I guess we'll see on the other side whether that's going to work for them. What about the other game today, which was the Gold Coast Suns and Drewsy's Fremantle Dockers? Did you catch any of that one?
I did. I actually watched a lot more of that in between assembling my bed frame, which I'm the least handy person I've ever met.
I'm glad that you watched it, though, because I didn't watch much of this one at all.
I was sort of missing the first 5 minutes of every quarter because I'd go up and assemble one part of the frame, and it was really frustrating. But
we've all been there.
I haven't even finished. But anyway, yes, I watched it. Really engaging contest. Really good win by Fremantle. And having watched probably 80% of the game, I think one thing that stood out at the end was Fremantle's ability to control the footy in the weather was actually far superior to Gold Coast. Now, I don't know whether or not that was just a composure thing as well, but I felt that the Suns had these half opportunities. They kept fumbling quite late, and by contrast, Fremantle, when they were getting themselves out of trouble, because Gold Coast had a lot of territory in their last quarter, it cost them, and Fremantle was slicker. So great win for Fremantle that caps off a really good 3-week period for them.
It's actually interesting that you say that because when you look at the guys in that Gold Coast midfield, you're talking like you Noah Anderson types, even Flanders to a point, Tuke Miller, those sort of guys. You think about them and you kind of think they'd be probably a little bit more slick than say your Caleb Sarong types who, he's good on the ball in some sense, but he's probably not the best by foot necessarily. So that is interesting. I saw that massive right at the end of the game. I saw that Brayshaw moment where he was like so close to being concussed. I don't know if you caught that part. Got the free kick and then they sort of got it forward. And I think it was a Shea Bolton tackle. And I just think Freo's resurgence is going to be so much leaning on that acquisition that they got in the offseason to bring Shea Bolton into that forward half of the ground. He's that perfect player at the moment. I think like Cozzy Pickett, Shea Bolton, they're almost becoming the most important player on the field for most teams, and I think Freo's no exception with Bolton.
That's true. I mean, I said that I thought Fremantle were, by the eye test, the slightly better side all day, but you take Shea Bolton out of that game and they probably don't win it. That's probably the difference that he
I'm just having a look at his numbers, like 3 goals, 2, 20 touches, 6 tackles. Obviously that really pivotal one at the end, which set up the goal for Jaya Miss as well. So I don't know, those kind of players that can sort of do it all. They can get involved from centre bounce and from stoppages, and then they can kind of drift forward, get the ball out in space. They can win contests when they have to in like the tight spaces inside forward 50. I feel like that's a more important player these days than say your clearance midfielder, like your Lachie Neale or your Caleb Sarong type.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fremantle for a little while now have had the cake, and they've just added a little bit of icing, would you say?
That like a bit of clarity, because they'd have all the entries, right? Like Sarong can get you the ball inside forward 50, but until you've got those guys at ground level, and I think there's like that over time now they've started to build those key position players. Like Tracy's really good. A Miss probably the jury's sort of still out on him for me. Just kind of what his role is, but they've started to build those small forwards that I think are kind of more important. Murphy Reed's come in and had a huge impact as a first-year player. What Shea Bolton's done is pretty incredible. And if they can sort of utilise like a player like Michael Fredericks, use his athletic traits, what he's got, his presence, his energy and all of those sorts of things, I think there's a future there.
Absolutely. Do you think where on the spectrum of legitimacy is Fremantle right now?
That's a good question. Yeah. And I think Drewsy's starting to appear. Always find a way to pot Sarong. Yeah, exactly. Where do I see them? So, okay, pre-season, I did a ladder prediction and I had them finishing in, I think it was 3rd or 4th. Like it was really high. Mm-hmm. And that's like purely based on projection, right? You're kind of going, okay, though that midfield's another year older. They bring in pretty much everything that they need in free agency in the trade period, getting like Shea Bolton. Like that's a massive haul of players, a massive player to bring in for them. The back line's pretty solid, although it can get exposed. I still think that they could be pushing for like one of the 4 to 6 type area. I don't know. I can't see them being in a prelim at the same time. I can't see them going like winning enough games in a row from say outside the top 4, which I think they'd be hard pushed to finish in the top 4 now. So for that reason, playing away from home at some point, I doubt they make a prelim. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's about right. The last 3 wins have been really impressive. I'd say 2 of those 3 wins I wouldn't have picked, and I didn't think they were capable of beating the Giants, albeit in fairness, the Giants just nearly bottled that against Richmond. So, but even still, Fremantle still won that game by 7 goals to their credit. And to beat the Suns at Metricon, is that the first time that's happened this year?
Beat the Suns at I
don't know.
They lost to the Tigers.
They did it.
No, they lose to? Oh, they lost to the Lions at the Gabba.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I feel like there's another loss in there, but either way, it's generally a pretty hard thing to do. So,
for sure.
Port Adelaide, tough one. It's actually really hard to measure what the value of a win over Port is, because Port have been at times really impressive, but for the most part, awful.
Yeah.
To be honest, they sit in the bottom 4. But
in some ways, like out of those 3 wins against the Giants, the Gold Coast and Port, in a lot of ways, the Port Adelaide one for Freo for me feels a bit more impressive. And I think this is the thing that they're going to have to struggle with across the season, because that one they actually were expected to win. So they travel to the Giants. Everyone expects them to lose, and they kind of have a backs against the wall win. The Gold Coast one is a little bit similar, you know what I mean? Like one of the form teams at the comp, they go up there, they're expected to lose, they win. What about when they actually have some expectation, which they did coming into the season, and they've sort of failed that? So I think that's going to be the next kind of block of 6 to 8 games. It's going to be more about that.
It does almost feel like a coming of age moment for Fremantle, but we have been seduced in the past. One thing I will say for them, I've given them a very bittersweet sort of rundown here, but they are still the least experienced team in the competition, and I think bottom 2 or 3 for experience by the actual selected teams this year. So that kind of explains a lot of inconsistency and probably dealing with expectation that we're now seeing with Hawthorn a little bit. Hawthorn's lost 3 on the bounce against good teams, but they are now the hunted, and I think Fremantle's probably got some maturity to do, but their best football is very capable of beating good teams.
100%. And we are underway here at the SCG Adelaide versus the Sydney Swans. What are you thinking here, Jesse?
I have bravely tipped Sydney.
I haven't tipped. Who am I going to... I weirdly haven't even thought about this. I'm going to tip Adelaide. I have to tip Adelaide.
Yeah.
How have you seen... So we were going to do a bit of a preview on these teams. The Siren sort of caught up with us here to start the game. How have you seen Sydney's season? Did you expect this? When you did your ladder predictors and whatever, where did you have them, and then kind of where has it fallen?
Well, the Swans... I actually cannot remember for the life of me where I put them. I think it was either 8th or outside the 8s. On the basis that, and there's a little bit of just following a bit of pattern here, but the last time they got belted in a grand final, they didn't come back so well. Plus, there was a change of coach this year. I thought that there's no questioning the list talent, albeit we know structurally they're a little bit unconventional. You know, we've talked about this spineless team.
I was actually going to ask you, my next question I was going to ask you is like, did you hear that episode?
Yes, yeah.
And the clip up and everything?
Yeah, it was very funny. Very, very good title, spineless.
Snappy,
I liked it. I think
snappy.
people missed the pun though.
They did. They massively did. They thought we were talking about their football club is...
Yes.
And like the mentality of the players are spineless, but
Yeah.
it was actually the structural spine.
Oh, it worked. We got some great engagement. Good brand recognition there.
Yeah.
Look, I think it is true that their strength is not in their spine. However, Collingwood won a flag without a pretty... what do they have? Like one elite tall in that team in 2023. And Sydney's also made 2 grand finals that way. So... that wasn't the concern for me, put it that way. For me, it was about how resilient they were going to be able to come back. And they've played some good footy this year, and for the most part, looked pretty average, to be honest. So,
do you think though, like when you said you weren't worried about the tolls, but say like, do you think Dean Cox kind of messed them around a little bit too much in that front half of the season, like putting McCartan forward, which left them pretty vulnerable in the back line? Do you think they would have been just better off going for like a more kind of, I don't know, more what they were used to, not having as much change as quickly, while they also juggled those injuries like Gulden being out, Mills being out? I've actually they've had so many players out at the start of the season.
yeah,
So
they have, yeah.
McDonald, Papley, Fox, Cunningham, Amati's been out at times as well. So do you think he's partly to blame for it?
Look, you might be right, but I do kind of, at the same time, respect a new coach's right to experiment a little bit. You know, we're seeing, to drag West Coast back into this, but another team with a new coach, and there has been a whole heap of experimentation. So I do kind of like that from Cox. Yeah, it backfired, perhaps. But, you know, that's kind of the position he's been put in, with the combination of injuries and perhaps not some such strong key position stocks, you know what I mean? So, look, I think McCartan forward, I'm not too critical of the fact that he made that move. But, look, yeah, he's probably much better.
We're talking about their tools and spineless, and like McLean, who's probably the poster boy of all that conversation about Sydney, just kicks the first goal of the game just to rub it in our face. I picked up on something that Dean Cox said in the off-season when he was asked about what he's going to try and imprint on this team. And he said that the biggest thing that he wants to change in this current Sydney team from that grand final, or that 2024 season, was the way that they defended. And it's interesting how you look at this, because they're like, just looking at the numbers, defending D50 transition chains. So basically, those chains that come from the back half and they can get into the forward half of the ground. Last year, they restricted opposition to only 10.9% of those chains working. And this year it's gone up to 12.3, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is fairly significant when you look at the entire competition that are all sitting, somewhere between 9 and 15. And they go from 10.9 to 12.3.
Interesting.
Do you think that's significant, or do you think that's not working? Or would you say that that's probably, he just needs a little bit more time and the players probably need a bit more time to be able to get their head around the way that he wants to defend? Because I think he wanted to, try a little bit more zonal stuff as opposed to one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard to answer. The thing with Sydney, though, just sort of going more macro on this, I think a lot of it is between the ears for this footy club. Talent doesn't just disappear. And okay, I'm ignoring the fact that they have injuries right now, but we even saw within the 2024 season as its own thing, like every evolution of Sydney we've ever seen.
Yeah,
at times the best team in the competition, and at their worst were. Well, I think back to that loss against West Coast. Sorry, that didn't happen. That loss against Port Adelaide, where they resembled West Coast, is what I meant to say. Yeah. And you have to think that like a footy club putting in a performance like that, I think that goes well beyond structural. I think that's players dropping their bundle, and it's just hard to imagine a team in first place on the ladder doing that. So
Isaac Rankin has just pumped a goal through here on the run. He is a very, very easy on the eye player to watch, isn't he?
Good footballer too.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, we were up close and personal with him last week, the West Coast Eagles. So
did a number on you?
Got treated to the Isaac Rankin show. Yeah.
I love Ben Keys. Not that he did anything good.
Yeah.
That was like terrible, but
yeah,
I absolutely love him.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I suppose like what you're saying there is like they're actually a little bit more psychologically spineless as opposed to the structural.
Your word, not mine.
No, but that's kind of what you're saying. You're saying that there's actually a little bit of fragility there, I suppose. It's hard though. Like when you start to see, you think about those performances that you mentioned, like late last year, and then they were sort of able to pull themselves together for the finals, not the grand final, but was on some level, was John Longmire actually polishing a turd in that they're... Is that the wrong way to say that?
Sydney fans hate us. No, I don't think so. I
don't think he was polishing? Okay.
No, I don't think so. Look, I would agree, generally speaking, that there's some structural things you would like to change about the way they front up with their best 22, but they also have some of the best running players in the competition, like Chad Warner, Isaac Heaney, Errol Gulden. As a start, James Rowbottom is a quality player.
Yep.
There's so much to like about that Sydney group with so much talent.
That's Goulden's the one for me where if any of those other guys were out and they were playing this kind of football, I'd be like, you can't, like, I don't know, having just Papley out, for example, having Amadi out, I don't think you can really complain. Like everybody has those sorts of injuries. Sydney feel like their entire game is built around Gulden. Like he's the connector. He connects everything. He makes their transition work. And for several seasons to kind of build a game plan that kind of works around a player like that just runs so hard, gets into the open space, and then you just pretty much lose that for a significant period of the season. They have to kind of play a different way, and they haven't been able to adjust to that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good analysis there. Errol Gulden he's not a unique player, but he's just a little bit unique in the sense that, certainly in that Sydney Swans
he's
midfield.
Unique. I think like his ball use, he's really in that top bracket of users with the footy, which is a big thing to lose. I think like you could say he was a physical monster at stoppages and stuff like that. You can kind of replace those players.
That's right, yeah.
But a ball user like that, the guy that is consistently kicking the ball inside 50 for you, getting 25 to 35 touches in that range, you're just not going to be able to replace that quickly. Druzy says, didn't know there was a dress code. And it didn't feel like we'd dressed in the same clothes, but it actually looks really similar on camera.
You forgot to wear your fake mustache. I've got mine.
I did forget to wear my fake mustache. What else have we got? Rogue Riot. Tell you what, the production has skyrocketed since the days of my mug joining for an out of sync grand final stream.
That's right. Rogie was an all-star last year.
That's gone over my head.
Oh, he was. We did StreamYard, and he would be in the stream with me.
Excellent.
It was probably some of the last streams it did, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Rogie.
Yeah,
love Rogue.
Rogue Riot. Big pies, man.
Angus Heasley, is Bice going big tonight? What have you thought of his start to AFL. Riley Bice. Do you know much about him?
Yeah, I mean, running sort of defender, isn't he?
Yeah.
Look, I've got him in my fantasy team, so I have
Who doesn't?
paid attention to his numbers.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a really strong opinion, but it seems like they've unearthed a pretty good mature age talent from memory, wasn't he?
100%.
How did they get it? Was it SSP? Was it mid-season?
No, he was taken in the Nacional.
As an 18-year-old or overager?
No, overager,
I
yeah.
thought so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking SSP. But yeah, there you go.
I think he's around 25, Riley Bice.
Yeah, thought so.
Yeah, so great pickup for them. Good kind of complementary player to like a Nick Blakey. That definitely does feel like, again, like when you look at their halfbacks now and you're looking at players like Matt Roberts, like Riley Bice, and you don't have Gulden there, those guys have to do a lot more. And it's a little bit more difficult for them, and it kind of shows it up. UCAT.
Hey.
Did we prearrange outfits tonight? So that's...
I'm going to get this a lot, apparently.
Yeah. I should have changed. Damn it. Jog On says, hey, Jesse, is it true the Eagles are more supportive of Flog Fremantle than the floggers are of the Eagles? Jesus.
Anecdotally, I do think that's true. I do think that's true.
Can you just explain that back to me?
Yeah, so I interpreted that question as, are West Coast fans a little bit more sympathetic to Fremantle than vice versa?
Gotcha.
I wouldn't say that the
Essentially,
average...
they hate you more.
Yeah, and less likely to support us if in a grand final, for instance, than the other way around. I do think that's true. I think there is a little bit more of an aversion of Fremantle fans to support West Coast than the other way around. I feel like you have a lot of WA footy fans over there, like quite a lot of more casual fans that are like, I'll support both of them. But I found that most of them went more for Freo than West Coast.
Until I moved to Melbourne, I didn't realise how tribal football states were. South Australia and WA care deeply about how you talk about their players, how much recognition that you give to their players. As a Tasman, like I'm not from Victoria, so I'm not deliberately Vic bias, if that makes sense. Like I am from being here, obviously. I talk about certain players here that I see more, but I didn't ever get that from Tasmania that, you don't talk about Tasmanian players enough. I don't know if that's because we don't have an AFL team. It's just,
Probably is that, yeah.
It was...
Sorry, do you mean as a content creator, the feedback you get? Is that what you mean?
I suppose that's where I see it mostly, but just on like, I don't know, on social media as well, like not even necessarily as a content creator, but just how much a content creator will make a mock draft or they'll talk about a certain player or team. And if they're associated with either West Coast or Freo, there's a lot of animosity towards whatever is happening with them.
Yeah, true. I'll probably acknowledge that me personally, the two sides I'm probably... been found out the most as not really knowing enough and made opinions on before was actually both of these sides. I've really rubbed both of these sets of fans, Adelaide and Sydney, wrong in the past because...
Really?
Yeah, I mean, not massively, but I found that I probably get those comments of you need to do some research a little bit more on those clubs specifically.
Sure.
And I do think that, well, they're not in Western Australia and a lot of the Victorian media is about Victorian clubs. So some of these interstate sides fall by the wayside unless you're Brisbane who win the flag and then it's very evident why they're good. So, for instance, like the Crows, I've probably been a little bit slow to pick up that they've had something brewing for some time.
Yeah, okay. I've got you. So specifically these two teams, you think that the fans have come for you at times because of maybe a lack of knowledge about them?
Yeah, no doubt. Particularly Sydney fans, actually. But I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying sometimes I have gaps as well. And I probably know more about Fremantle than I do most other clubs, to be honest.
Yeah, because they're in your... They get written about more, right?
Yeah.
Probably the content that you watch has more discussion about them.
Yeah.
Closer to, the players better. Grundy's doing really well in the ruck tonight so far. So Sydney, good start for the Crows. 2 goals, 2, 14-8, 11 minutes.
I'm getting old because for some reason when you said Grundy then, I thought Heath Grundy.
No.
It's the right team. But
what era is that? That's like...
I think that was like 10 years. Yeah, I think he might have finished up like
I was going to say, was
ago.
Grundy in the 05 flag?
I reckon he might have been. And if he wasn't, he was certainly in 12.
For sure.
I'm taking a punt there, but I reckon that was that era.
Good defender. Jogon says, little bros will stay mad.
Yeah. I think I'm going to oversimplify the relationship, but West Coast is seen as a bit more of the elitist Man United, and Fremantle's the underdog working class, and certainly that's how the club started, particularly Fremantle. That was literally part of their brand and their identity. So I think, it's hard to have a Premier League comparison, but nobody has Man United as a second team,
Nah, for sure.
I think.
No, and I'm a Liverpool fan, and it's hard to make this comparison right now because of Liverpool being so successful and Manchester United being so unsuccessful right now. But that's how it sort of felt probably 10, 15 years ago, right? It was like we were we cared deeply about how they talked about us, where they probably didn't give a shit because they were winning.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and sure enough, in Western Australian football, West Coast and Fremantle have sort of traded periods of being good. It's about 10 years ago, we nearly played in a grand final against each other, and the same thing happened 10 years before that. But other than that, we've swung hard in opposite directions.
Why do you think they've had as far as premierships, a lack of success?
I think it took them a long time to get going from an admin point of view. Much gets said of their recruiting. I think recruiting and drafting in particular back then was such an inexact science that it's hard for me to lay into them for that.
Druzy mentions that a lot on the stream. He talks about how some of the massive mistakes they made back in the 90s and early 2000s, but I'm sure that they did. Like, I'm not doubting that, but I think a lot of teams did as well.
That's right, yeah. They got pretty close twice. So it's hard to say exactly why. I think the retention issues were a little problem as recently as 2022. So they're probably one of the first clubs in this modern era of drafting and rebuilding through the draft that undertook a very lengthy rebuild. And it was kind of self-inflicted. After that 2015 grand final team, the wheels came off. It was similar to how West Coast, it came off for them as well. And North Melbourne, obviously not a premiership side, I'm sorry. But, when they fell down the ladder, they fell down in pretty hard fashion.
Yep.
And Fremantle one of the first teams here to go through this 10-year rebuild thing. And it seems like it's becoming more and more prevalent. Both of our clubs seem to be in the midst of one right now.
For sure.
I think they've drafted pretty damn well over this last 10-year period. They've had some bad luck with, like I said, retention.
Yeah.
Some of that's probably, not just luck. I'm not saying there's cultural issues there, but I'm sure there was, one or two trades here where, maybe they could have avoided it. And that's true for every club.
So looking at the players that left, I'm thinking, gone blank on his name for some reason. Guy that went to St Kilda. Henry.
Yeah.
They lost him. Obviously Schultz.
Yep. Well, they lost Griffin Logue, Darcy Tucker.
See, I don't like Griffin Logue and Darcy Tucker. Do you put them in the same bracket?
No, but they're an example of two club players that would probably prefer to stay, particularly Griffin Logue, I think, as a best 22 player. And I think,
and he's a tall.
That's right. And 7 players all leaving at once at the end of 22, I think, kind of ripped a hole in their depth. Gotcha. As we saw manifest on the ladder. They fell apart the next year. But it goes back a little bit further. Adam Cherrer is in this mix.
Yes.
They had Brad Hill, Rory Lobb, Blake Acres, Jesse Hogan come to the club and then leave, which is very funny.
Hogan must really get under their skin, surely.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that one would hurt, to be fair.
I reckon Rory Lobb would hurt too. I know they hate him, but he must piss them off that he like the football that he's playing right now for the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask a Fremantle fan. He's kind of, you can understand why he's an irritating player, with all due respect as well. But, the theatrics is mostly what I'm referring to there.
Yeah. No, but I think like going back to the thing that you said about their drafting, like they when you actually start to go through all those players, like how many misses have they had? Not many. No,
I think honestly, for a good number of years now, I've really respected Fremantle's drafting. Okay, there's been some high picks in there. So they drafted Sarong, Young, and Liam Henry was an academy pick. I thought Jai Omis at the time looked like a fantastic pick. I'll still give him the benefit of the doubt there. He still might become a good player. Brayshaw at pick 2 was a bit of a leap. at the time.
Just going back to Amos there. So Amos is also implicated in the Chera discussion.
I think it was the direct swap.
It was the direct
for the pick.
Yeah.
That's right. Who else we got there? Murphy Reid looking like a pretty good selection at pick 18.
Yeah.
That one was probably...
That was low-hanging fruit, I feel.
Really?
Like, as in, he slid because teams... They got, like, through that teens area there in the draft, there was a lot of jockeying going on. Like, you had... Richmond was sure that the Giants were going to take Jonty Fall with one of their picks if they didn't go there. So they had to go there. They took Taj Houghton as that high upside operator with the other... because they had back-to-back 13-14. Then you had... Port Adelaide were just particularly keen on Joe Berry.
Yep.
They got up for that. And then who was in between? You
West
guys.
Coast, yeah.
You guys were in between that. So you guys had, like, obviously wanted Bo Allen, probably largely because he was local as well.
I presume so. There was a fair bit of noise that Murphy Reid
didn't want to go
over East. And I think West Coast in particular would probably be quite nervous about that. Whereas Fremantle probably better placed to take that risk, I'd say.
Yes.
I mean, like him playing the way he is right now, even if he's not there for his whole career, if he's part of a flag push over the next few, like that's actually a huge win. So I'd say they were better placed to take that risk. But he's playing beautifully.
I think you're 100% right, though. The fact that... So there were two things that were spoken about with Murphy Reid late on in the draft, and one was that. And I don't know if it's like, there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. Or whether there actually was truth to it. Probably there was. Clubs were a bit concerned about that. And they're also just concerned about, a midfielder that doesn't necessarily have that really like high-end athleticism. So they get a little bit stuck in a certain position. I mean, early days, he looks like he's kind of proved that wrong. But I feel like one of those clubs eventually, and it got to Freo, and that kind of hit the point, like he was too high quality as a mid to just let him go. So he was like... All I'm saying there, I guess, is that he was... It became a point where he was an easy selection to make.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I would still broadly say I think their drafting's been good.
For sure.
But I agree with your point on that. I mean, you could look at some of their later picks. Some of the later picks they've drafted have been really good. Like some key role players in Switkowski. Josh Tracy was a rookie draft selection, I feel like.
That's an incredible one, Tracy.
Yeah. 2016 draft, I think all four were good, depending on your current views on Sean Darcy.
Oh, I mean, as a draft pick, I'd have to rate it. I suppose the issue there is more about the recruiting of Jackson and then how that all works, I suppose. And then that's more of like, I think that starts to get into that conversation about the entire club and like like what was going on with the recruiting team and the coach and like how did they think it was going to work and were they looking at all of the right things to sort of like make them a better team? I feel like that's the issue. Or were they just going, good player, come here? Like doesn't, I feel
like that does happen a little bit with AFL sides. I feel like sometimes it's about get the player and worry about the rest later.
Yeah. I think there's a media element to that as well. It's like he wants to come here. We have to make a big thing about this. He wants to come here. It's an attractive place to be.
Yeah.
Big signing, gets the fans excited.
Yeah, I'd imagine if, like, in a hypothetical scenario, someone like a Chad Warner wants to come to one of the WA clubs, can't imagine either of them going, well, he doesn't really fit in our structure. So,
yeah.
And that's probably true of Fremantle. They probably really don't need to spend that collateral on him.
I actually totally agree. Like, I don't think Chad Warner would necessarily, like, instantly make Freo, like, a way better team that he would at, say, West Coast.
Yeah.
You guys would love to have him. But, yeah, it's an interesting one how you work all of that. No doubt their drafting's been great, though. Keezy just goes inside 50. Adelaide are all over them here.
They are. Yeah, we should probably talk about this game a little bit more because my tip of Sydney is looking worse by the minute.
They just look extreme, and it's really un-Sydney-like over the last few years. They look really uncomfortable with pressure.
Yeah.
Keys.
Oh, almost unlocks that goal.
It's McCarthy.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I think Melican was back in the team tonight after an absence. I'm just having a look at the ins. So Wicks with a hammy, Mills with that suspension, Ollie Florent was omitted. And it was actually interesting because Dean Cox, after that loss last week, he said that he was going to the changes were coming. And then he dropped one player.
That's real Adam Simpson areas.
Yeah, he didn't really go through with that. I mean, he made 3 changes, but 2 of them were forced.
Yeah.
So he only dropped Florent. And in came Melican, McInerney, and I think it's Caleb Mitchell, who I don't know too much about.
Yeah. Caleb Mitchell, was he... No, I'm thinking of Cooper Vickery.
Oh, that's got to be deliberate.
I think. Do you think that, and I'm not saying this within any kind of loaded way, because I'm not going to pretend to know Sydney's reserve quality that well, but to me that speaks of a coach who doesn't really rate what's coming up underneath. We saw this very much with Adam Simpson throughout probably the back end years after the premiership, and I will, forgive me, I keep referring to West Coast because I find parallels, but Simo was...
Sydney fans are shitting themselves now.
It's not that quite bad, but Simo was pretty bad at picking the favourites all the time, and that's something he's come out and spoken about since. But I felt I
haven't actually heard that discourse. What's he said? Sorry, I should let you make your point.
No, it's okay. Adam Simpson does a lot of radio now. I think it's for SEN.
Yeah,
Adam Simpson. And he's... I've just seen like pictures quoting the quotes, but he'll say things like, "I probably showed too much loyalty to certain players."
Really,
and that was a criticism many fans had of him.
I remember that. That was heavy.
Yeah. And justifiably so. At the time, we really had nothing coming up underneath. So, particularly towards the back end of his time.
I mean, we're talking there, right? We're talking Shuey. Oh, not Shuey. God. Sheed.
Well, the players coming up would probably been like Luke Edwards, Xavier O'Neill, Braden Ainsworth.
But he was paying too much loyalty to the Gaff and Sheed and those types, right?
A lot of them were just underdone the whole time as well. That didn't help. But yeah, just bringing it back to Sydney, surface level analysis. If he wants to swing the axe but is not doing it, is there a lack of performance coming up underneath? What's the go? Maybe Sydney fans can help us out in the comments. I might see if I can get these.
I do think it's an issue when you look at the ins that they've kind of brought in across this season. Like, I look at a player like Angus Sheldrick. And again, like you think about the player that's sort of missing. It's like an Errol Gulden type player. And then you bring in, you've already got Heaney and Warner who are like, your top end sort of clearance players. I don't know what a player like Angus Sheldrick really does. That those players don't already do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a lack of... With Gulden out of the side, it just all of a sudden looks like a massive hole with their ball users, their kickers. Being able to control games looks totally different.
Agreed. Yeah, I think Gulden, as a meters gain player, as a ball use player, I think if you made the point, like if you had a big stoppage player that you could replace that, well, you could probably find one more easily to replace. They're probably easier players to come by, with all due respect.
Yeah.
But even like with your contest method and the way you set up at stoppages, there's other things you can do, but it's very hard to manage without your best meters game player who drives the ball inside 50.
For sure.
I actually don't think he's their best meters game player, but it was just a general point.
Gulden, that is.
Yeah.
Oh, he absolutely is.
He is? I thought Blakey might have him covered.
No. I mean, obviously he's not playing this season. I'll bring that up just to have a bit of a look at it.
Yeah.
Just for reference anyway. But 2024 he would have had to have been. I'm certain. Here we go. He was the second best meters game player in the competition. 553.8 meters per game, only behind Max Holmes.
I shouldn't have doubted myself.
No, you were on it. I mean, Blakey's good too, 494, so he's in the top 20 players.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing. Like to give your team that much territory and then to use the ball like he does, and he's such a high kick player. I mean, it's not like he's going 15 handballs, 15 kicks, is he? He's 25 kicks, 5 handballs kind of a guy.
Rogue Riot points out that Sydney's VFL side is currently second last, so that kind of
perfect.
Yeah, I just hung that out there a little bit. So hopefully there's something to that point.
I'm just bringing up their squad right now of players. I mean, again, I talked about Angus Sheldrick. They've got a Taylor Adams kind of sitting in the wings there. I don't know, is he in tonight? I think I did see him running out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Like, he's aging, isn't he? Like, injury prone, doesn't have a lot of speed. Never has been like a great kick of the football. It just looks a little bit tired there. Cunningham's out, Rowbottom, Hayward. I feel like Hayward's looking really underwhelming this season.
Doesn't he have a purple patch, or am I imagining that earlier in the year? Can't remember.
I don't feel like any Sydney player's been in
That's fair.
a purple patch. That might be overselling it, but like maybe he was playing better earlier in the season. I feel like he's a little bit lost. I don't know what his scoreboard returns are. I'll have a look at that in a second.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you're playing at the moment players like Hamling and Aaron Francis. Like they are VFL players.
Yeah.
They're not AFL players.
It's hard to argue with that. Rogie also pointed out, or he made the point that Sydney rely too much on their midfield to score. That is so true.
Yes.
And Papley. But yeah.
For sure. Woody just says, Woody from Wooden Spoon Data.
G'day, Woody.
Sydney has internal issues, I assume. You don't clear out a grand finalist coach. Dun, 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 dun. That's saucy.
Is that Law and Order? What song is that?
I don't know.
Dun, 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 dun. I think it's Law and Order.
It just sounded spicy.
I love it. Such a random reference. Longmire stepped down though, didn't he? He wasn't pushed aside, was he?
That's what they said anyway.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
That's what they all say.
Cooper Baker, happy to see Jesse. Very good. Chris says lads.
Lads.
Yes. And Chris also says Sydney missing a Buddy-sized hole. I don't really agree with that.
Gross.
I feel like Buddy was... that one went over my head again.
It's good. Let's leave it there.
I feel like they were too Buddy conscious before he retired.
Yeah.
Oh, so what's Blakey doing there? Blakey's just absolutely spoiled when he should have marked. That's out. It's not going to be out.
Oof.
Dawson.
God.
Oh, what a beast. What a beast. Missed it though.
So far, West Coast is putting up a better fight against Adelaide than Sydney is. We need to cling to absolutely every positive we can have this year.
For sure.
Oh, we had a better quarter in quarter one of our game against the Crows.
We've decided to do a live stream together and we follow, I mean, objectively, we follow the shittest teams of the last 5 years.
Yeah, next week will be interesting. Should we live stream the North versus West Coast game in Bunbury?
I would absolutely love to do that.
Yeah. There'll be a different feel to it. How are you during games where North's playing? Have you done a North stream this year?
Okay, so no. The answer is no, but we did a Collingwood. I think it was a Collingwood and... no, I've forgotten the game that we were actually doing. We were doing a game earlier in the season and North played the other Saturday night slot. And we did it at the same time. And we actually switched over because the game got too boring and North were in it. And as soon as we switched it on, they just sucked.
That wasn't round one.
It might have been.
Collingwood was slaughtering Port Adelaide and North were playing the Bulldogs. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we were in the game. And I remember being pretty disappointed at the time because at that time we didn't really have that clarity that the Western Bulldogs were a really good side. They had a lot of outs and I thought the expectation was that we would push them a little bit. And we struggled to kind of close that one out. But
that's an interesting read because you lost by about 16 points, I reckon.
Yeah, it was pretty close. I guess I was disappointed in the sense that they were missing like Treloar, they were missing Bont, they were missing Waitman. I think there were even other players out for that game in particular. I
think looking back at it though, the Bulldogs still played pretty okay footy, I thought, until those players came back. They weren't amazing.
No, they were pretty bloody good. I actually agree with you.
When they lost to Collingwood by 6 points, I remember thinking, geez, if the Bulldogs are doing this without two of their most important midfielders.
The issue was we didn't have that context because that was round one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we didn't, I just assumed that they would be not playing that great a footy with those guys out. And we should have been, I feel like particularly with those two midfielders out, we should have been testing them a little bit more than what we actually did. But I'm probably a pessimistic North fan a little bit at times, so I can be a bit harsh on them. We haven't talked about Adelaide much.
No, we haven't.
What do you think about the Crows? Crom.
They are playing really well, is my analysis. Look, I think the test for Adelaide will be being able to show up repeatedly, particularly away from home, and that week-to-week consistency. I think at the moment we know they're a good home team side. They kind of remind me again of West Coast. around 2014.
This is
that era.
outrageous now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, how many references is that? I'm purely doing this to draw parallels to make examples. That's all.
You've said the Swans are in a...
Their depth isn't great, much like West Coast.
Yeah.
No, go on. But I actually think this is a good point, so shut up. They remind me of West Coast when our... around like 2014, we had this era of smashing teams at Subiaco Oval and then not showing up with the same intensity away. Maybe not intensity, but not getting the same results.
Yeah.
And for us, it was pretty much the fact that we had such a prolific and efficient forward line that if we were neutralising the midfield battle, Lacroix, Kennedy, Darling one of them would kick 5 on you at Subiaco Oval.
Wait, what? Just give me the time frame here. We're talking...
I reckon like 2014.
2014. So what was the forward line at that point? You'd be talking Darling.
Yeah. If you stretched it a little bit earlier to 2011 to 2014, I'd say that era before we made the grand final.
Gotcha.
You'd probably include Quinton Lynch in there, although not a focal point. Josh Kennedy had come into his own by that year.
Yep.
So Darling, Lacroix, you probably got back end of Josh Hill, who was decent. Jamie Cripps, he more came good in 2015. I'm spacing a little bit now under the big lights.
I've got you though.
Either way, it was a very efficient forward line. I feel like Adelaide, the parallel there is we're seeing them at home torch some teams.
Yes.
And that happened in the second half against West Coast. But it's
they
happened all year, really.
They have scored the most amount of points of any team in the comp.
Is that right?
So,
yeah.
So
wasn't that true like a couple of years ago? I don't know. It's not that important. But I feel like in 2023, they also had a crazy... either a percentage or a points for as well.
I reckon it was because I remember they caught fire in the back half of that year. It was probably one of those like they were for like 8 weeks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So having the numbers in front of me.
It's like their forward line is so potent and efficient that they can put some big gaps between them and other sides.
Yes.
And perhaps they're not dropping off that much when they, lose the games they're not winning. But it's just because they can be so prolific in front of goal and so efficient that sometimes their wins just blow out.
Yeah, okay.
And somewhere like a Fremantle, their wins don't blow out because they don't have that same forward line efficiency, that forward midfield connection that other clubs do.
Gotcha.
So like the opposite example, really.
For sure. I mean, they have had some... I'm trying to think about the teams that they've lost to away. They had the game more recently against Collingwood.
Yeah.
Lost that one.
The
Suns.
I'm probably not like trashing their away form. I'm just more...
No, you are.
It's more contrasting how they can slaughter some teams. Like, for instance, Carlton had a bit of a improvement in form, and then I got slaughtered for saying Adelaide would beat them, and Adelaide won that game by 10 goals at Adelaide Oval.
I'm just going through all of their games here right now. So
there was the showdown they won.
So
narrowly.
Absolutely pumped the Saints in round 1.
Yeah.
63 points at home. Pumped the Dons at the MCG, so that's a big away win. They scored 161 points in that game.
Yep.
Incredible. They beat us by 36 at home. North fans were wrapped with that performance.
They lost to Fremantle in the Anzac Day clash as well. Sorry, I've skipped ahead.
Oh, you've skipped it. Oh, sorry. Gotcha. Yeah, they did too. So that's at Optus.
Yeah.
They beat the Giants at home. They lost to the Cats at home.
Yeah.
They lost that away one. I said at the Suns by a point. And then so I mean they haven't been outrageously poor away either, I suppose.
No, yeah, that wasn't so much my point. Just contrasting their home and away form. Like they're such a dangerous side to play at Adelaide Oval. And I would say that this win is look, I know Sydney are pretty average, but if they put up a big score away from home, if this game trends the way it is, I'd say that's another step forward, even if it's not the opponent who is in the best form of the competition right now.
If you were to pinpoint one part of the Crows that you would say... Well, actually, firstly, I'll ask you the question, where do you think they are? They're currently, just inside the top 4? I think they went into this round.
Not sure.
Somewhere around there, maybe 4th, maybe 5th, I believe.
Yeah, I think they were out of the 4 if I had to guess. Oh, no, they're 3rd on the live ladder, so we'll go off that.
Gotcha, yeah. 4th coming in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Because Gold Coast lost as well. That's right.
Yes. So where do you see their projecting to the end of the season without looking at the matchups and stuff like that? Where do you see them falling?
I would liken them to Fremantle 2022. Exciting young team on the up. Possibly even better to watch. They are an entertaining team with some real stars, but don't have quite the maturity to really do damage in September. So I'll say like 5th or 6th.
Do you think, though, they're near misses in the last couple of years where they've like narrowly missed finals? Most people have tipped them to make the finals those seasons and they've underperformed. Do you think they've potentially like skipped ahead a little bit here, where it's like bad season, or underwhelming season, and then they spike big time because they're not actually as young as like a Freo?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
I mean, I look at their age profile and you look at their best players, right? Like Saligo's really broken out this season. He's not that young. Like he's young, but he's probably 22 now, something like that. Thilthorpe, he's had quite a few years in the system now. Guys like Worrell, who are really like supporting in the back half. I look at Keane, who's coming through. Like he's in a decent age profile as well. They still do have maybe not the experience, like the really experienced players of some of the best teams in the comp. Like, you know, you're looking at players like Crouch, Laird. Crouch isn't even in the side at the moment. I think he's got an injury, but whether he gets back in, Riley O'Brien. So maybe they're older players that are like plus 30 aren't superstars like, for example, Collingwood are. But they're not necessarily in that really, I wouldn't say they're in that real youthful bracket, if that makes sense.
Well, to rebuttal you, I actually don't know the stats this year, but I remember last year, the two youngest sides in the comp for age and experience of selected sides, Adelaide and the Gold Coast Suns, funnily enough, which would have been my picks.
Yeah,
that was the year they missed the finals.
Do you think that is, though, like partly what I said, as in like your Collingwood, they'll have like a Steel Side Bottom and a Pendlebury who are like 35 and that massively takes the age up.
Absolutely. So a good example of this is actually Fremantle again. We're really lingering on the same sides here, but Fremantle, I think I said the least experienced and one of the youngest, but a lot of their players are like early prime or just before it.
Yep.
So they might show up as younger than, say, a West Coast.
Yes.
That's number 18 for references to West Coast. West Coast are very top and bottom heavy. So we've got the veterans in McGovern, who's like 33, Cripps 33, and that blows that average out. I wouldn't be surprised if Fremantle got much older this week because Nat Fyfe returned to the side with Sean Darcy as well. So yes, there is an example of how the mean average is not a great, it's a very simplistic, one-dimensional way of looking at it. Adelaide's, again, are similar to perhaps Fremantle in that a lot of their players are in that early approaching prime period. Jordan Dawson, you'd say, is in his prime, but Saligo, Rankin, I'd still say is approaching his prime.
Yes,
Phil Thorpe is like fourth year forward. Sorry, he was drafted as a forward ruck.
Yeah, he's not in his prime. I agree with that.
Yeah, so that's where a lot of their age is.
What they have done though in the off season to sort of go against that a little bit, like going for they brought in 3 players that are in their prime: Cumming, Peatling, and Alex Neil-Bullen.
Of course, yeah.
So not that that's like significantly put the age up either, but again, just brought in 3 players in the sweet spot. Like Fogarty's just come on screen there too, so he's probably in a similar vein to like a Thilthorpe, right? Like
that's
early
right.
20s.
Curtin, Michael Annie.
Yeah,
So
Curtin's
there's
young.
a lot of young talent in that team, but you're right, they're not like 18-year-olds. There's only a couple teams playing 18-year-olds really. Well, actually, that's probably overly simplistic, but more than 1 or 2, you're looking at North and West Coast. Like Richmond, Richmond's got a few as well.
Richmond's got a few for sure.
Rebuilding sides.
And particular to, like at times, Richmond have had like their forward line the other week. I think it was a game against the Dreamtime game. At one point, inside forward 50 was Jonty Fall, Tom Sims, Sam Lawler, and I can't remember who the 4th one was, but it was another first-year player. It was Luke Traynor.
Oh, okay.
As well. So all from the 2024 draft,
Wow.
all inside 50 at the same time. And then you basically had Lynch and, someone else there. But for sure, like there's really only those, in some ways, like currently, not that I want to put Richmond in the basket case, but like they're the teams that are kind of seen in the same group. I feel Richmond, West Coast, North Melbourne.
Yeah.
They're the only ones playing like significant 18-year-olds because you just can't carry too many.
That's right. And replacing 18-year-olds with other 18-year-olds when they come out of the side as well.
Actually, I'll give you one more that's probably doing that right now. That's Essendon.
Yeah, they're actually right up there or down there for average age.
Yeah.
They're quite a young team.
I mean, they've at times this season, and this has been confusing for me because as a North Melbourne fan who's had Brad Scott at the helm, I've always seen him as a coach that a bit what you were saying about Adam Simpson before, like he likes the old boys a lot. He'll stick with the solid. Does. Yeah. What did you say?
I said, I bet he does. Please continue.
Yeah. So he loves it.
Ruin your momentum.
Yeah. But no, that they have. He's actually played a lot of kids. Archer Day Wicks has had a debut. I didn't expect that. Angus Clark.
Yep.
He's been awesome in the couple of games. Caco's been there pretty much from the start.
Zachary Reid kind of counts. He's been around for a while, but yeah.
I think he was, 2022, 2021?
2020, I reckon.
Okay.
He was with Perkins and...
Sure he was. He's just been injured, hasn't he?
Nick Cox. Was
But even Lewis Hayes, they gave a debut to his knee.
Yeah.
But they haven't really been afraid to do it either. Darth Jar Jar says, how does West Coast play Carlton twice before playing Collingwood, Sydney or the Western Bulldogs? Yeah, Jesse, tell us why. How does that happen?
They're one of our bogey sides. And I know it's crazy to think we have a bogey side, but Carlton have big mids and a couple of power forwards that we have no answer for. So I really resent the fact that we've played them twice. We don't have to play at Jim HBA though.
Can I actually just say Darth Jar Jar also said when you were talking about West Coast before, Matt Rosa and Ash Hams.
What about?
I think we were talking about that era of like the forward line.
Yeah, I reckon Hams might have finished up around 12. Rosa was a wingman.
Yes, so I think he was just throwing in like two random names kind of thing. But
Rosa was in the team that era. Hams, I don't remember when he finished up. But yeah, that's true.
Did I at one point have an Ash Hams in my fantasy team? Would that have happened?
Are you thinking of steamed hams?
Yes. Preferably grilled.
We did call him Steam. That was his nickname on Big Footy.
Steamed. In this pocket at this time of year.
It's just the Northern Lights.
Chris says beating Sydney in Sydney is massive for any side. I don't disagree.
Yeah, look, this is a belting as well.
It's not looking good.
It's 45-8, and it's quite uncompetitive. Man, my tipping has been horrendous this weekend.
So what have we done? Thursday night was
Brisbane versus Essendon. Mind you, I nearly got that wrong. Essendon were fantastic in that game.
That was awesome, that game.
Maybe we should continue that thread. But I tipped Hawthorn last night because of their good record against Collingwood.
Fair.
It wasn't even a close game.
No.
I tipped Gold Coast to beat Fremantle today. That's an honourable loss. Like I think most people would have tipped the Gold Coast Suns. And I tipped Sydney thinking that they would... There's a bit of a roulette sort of thing here with Sydney because they can play well. It's just apparently not the week I tipped them.
Yeah. Who did they... Oh, they knocked off the Giants. That was their big scalp.
Yeah.
Which is not looking as big, maybe.
Yeah. I feel like there was somebody else. Well, they beat Fremantle in Perth.
Did they?
That's not a bad win. Yeah, it was like round 2, I reckon.
That's incredible now, looking back on that.
Yeah. And they slaughtered North, and I tipped North for that game, so...
Oh, you idiot.
But like the 1 week Sydney's played well.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, it was a bit brave. I still haven't tipped West Coast this year.
I haven't tipped us. Actually, no, that's a lie. You know the only game that I tipped us to win? Have a guess.
Carlton?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just remember a lot of North fans' angst of that because of that game because they thought they were going to win.
Yeah. There was...
Mind you, I think I tipped North too, actually.
There was some hope there for what... I have no idea why.
Yeah.
But there was.
It's
a goal. That has gone through.
Was that not touched off the boot?
That was a goal.
Yeah. If it wasn't touched off the boot, then that's a goal.
How does that happen? Matty Roberts is looking dejected on the goal line, but I'm pretty sure that's gone through. Rogue Riot forgot to tip this game.
Oh, you probably get the away team then. G'day, Kev's Magpies. G'day, Hoops Crew.
I think it has been touched, actually. Just on the line.
I was touching the line, yeah.
Right on the paint. I don't know. Oh, no, is that the Adelaide player, though?
No. Oh.
I think that's the Adelaide boot.
Yeah, it's the Adelaide boot, but...
Yeah. I reckon it's a goal. Would you call that touched? I think he's got his boot to it first.
I feel like I haven't... Oh... I don't feel like we've got a good enough angle on this.
He's called it a goal, though, I think.
No, it says a soft call behind.
It does, you're right.
Oh, that is very inconclusive.
Yeah. Most of them are, to be fair.
Do you remember the early days of this? Like the first couple of years, I reckon the footage was so grainy that every single review was inconclusive.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go back to the umpire's call.
We can't see anything. It's still a bit like that. Like, look at that footage. Like, why is that so bad?
Yeah. At least the footage is better now, but
Yeah.
like it was seriously bad before.
It's a goal.
Wow.
So that'll be Thilthorpe's goal, I assume.
That will be their revenge for the Ben Keys disallowed goal in 2023.
Yep.
A little bit less meaningful.
Yeah. Crows fans will definitely be fine with this as a make-up.
Yeah.
Who kicked this? I think it's Peatling.
Yeah, it was Peatling. Oh, yeah, definitely not touch off the boot. I don't know why I said that.
This is...
Oh, yeah, that looks like a goal to me. Yeah. On that angle.
And I think just because their hands are there, I think it's definitely... Yeah.
Yeah, that's a goal.
Pretty bad defending, though. It's clever by... Thilthorpe's got to get his boot to that at the right time.
Yes.
He's just a beast, isn't he?
Yeah.
If you could take for West Coast a next generation key forward, because I mean, you guys you've got a couple of young key forwards in the mix, but they probably haven't shown enough to kind of say that they're definitely going to be that next big guy. You've got your Allens and your Watermans, but if you could take one in the competition right now, who would you be taking?
Oh,
would it be
Jamara Ugle-Hagan? Nah.
Yes.
Yes. Look, Thilthorpe's a pretty good shout, but oh, jeez. Bring up the Coleman list.
Okay.
The leading cocket.
I can do that.
If you want, yeah.
Stats.
Yeah, you should get it up as a joke.
Jamie Elliott.
He's
not a key position forward.
Luke Jed Walter came immediately to mind.
Really?
Yeah.
You'd take him as
I'm
number
still
one?
a fan. Yeah, he was a West Coast fan growing up. He's from Perth.
Really?
Yeah, prior to the Gold Coast Academy, he was a Perth
So what
boy.
did he do? Just go there at a young age?
Yeah, not sure in the specifics, but I believe he was a West Coast fan. It could be one of those urban myths.
Interesting.
But I believe that's the case.
I mean, if you're a West Coast fan, you're pretty desperate, right? So you'll believe those sorts of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe we'll get him.
So of the key position forwards, we're talking Jeremy Cameron on top.
Yeah.
Ben King.
Well, if we're talking take them for West Coast.
Them for West Coast.
My mind went to 24 and under, which is why I said Walter and
Right.
Thilthorpe. I completely ignored all those top end key forwards.
It's fascinating that Fogarty is ahead of Thilthorpe in the Coleman. I did not know that.
Yeah. Sandy Brock did a good job on him last week, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how many games they've played.
That's true. That does actually fall strangely on the ears if you say that Fogarty had more goals than Thilthorpe.
No, he's averaging more as well.
Yeah, right.
2.6 to 2.3. Charlie Curnow would still have to be in consideration for that, surely, at his age.
Isn't he? Is he 2015 draft? That makes him 28 this year.
Yeah. I suppose for West Coast, that's out.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need a 4-year window of Charlie Curnow.
Surely the answer to this is Sam Darcy, though.
Yes, because I forgot about Sam Darcy.
Yes.
I was about to start going backwards in my head through the drafts. Yeah, you'd probably say Sam Darcy.
Any like rogue shout that you'd go for, like Mitch Georgiades?
Nah. No disrespect, but
just starts to drop off. Druzy will probably come in here and say Josh Tracy.
Logan Morris is a good shout. Oh, Josh Tracy. Yes, actually, Josh Tracy would genuinely be one of the first considered.
You reckon?
Oh yeah, I'm a big proponent.
Cooper Sharman. Can I?
Oh yes, yes.
Can I offer you? He's been pretty good. To be
thanks,
fair.
I'm full.
Logan Morris. You'd also have to consider someone like a Nate Caddy, surely.
Yeah, big fan of Nate Caddy. I suppose like if we're talking though this stealing a player for your club, it feels like, you know, there's a lot of opportunity cost. You would go someone with a little bit more runs on the board, but still in the potential bracket.
Is there any chance that you would go like really rogue on potential and go for someone out of the 2024 draft? Like Rogue Wright's just suggested that it's Charlie West. He's the answer and it's not even close.
Yeah, right up there with Finley McRae, Rogie. Rogie was adamant that Finley McRae was going to tear the competition apart like 12 months ago, I think, or the year before.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but he was very disappointed with what actually happened.
Rogie.
Rogie.
Rogie also said it's got to be Sam Darcy before that.
Yeah.
So I think he's taking the piss there.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. Sorry, what did you ask me right before that? Would I go rogue outside the 2024 draft class? Were there really? I mean, I know there was a lot of talls, but I don't know
You'd be
who was the best one.
I mean, if you called Alex Tyrou a key forward, you could throw him in the mix. He was the highest drafted.
Yeah.
Jonty Fall was the next.
I wouldn't really be. None of those jump out at me.
They're not jumping off. Harry Armstrong.
So unproven that they wouldn't be coming into this conversation for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look at those hands. Big mark from Thilthorpe. What are we at? 43 points the margin.
Whew.
I feel like there's been this season, there's been a lot of these games on Saturday night that have just been absolute stinkers.
That's true. In fact, I was going to say today wasn't a fixtured day, but to be fair, Gold Coast versus Fremantle is a pretty good game. And GWS versus Richmond ended up being a good game, and this would have looked like a good game at the start of the season.
This would have, yeah. I mean, I guess there were some people out there that didn't rate the Crows as highly. I was pretty keen on the Crows this year myself. I had them in the top 8. But they always, the Crows are always there or thereabouts, aren't they? It's rare that they really, really drop off.
That's true. Yeah, even at their worst, post, what do you call it? Preseason camp. That
post camp, yeah.
When they started to come out the other side of that, I felt like they were always a team on the rebuild that played with a bit of tenacity and a bit of grit, even though they were getting slapped. I think they won a spoon, didn't they? Of course, 2020.
Yeah, they after the power stance, that was kind of the end, wasn't it, for the Crows? But they've built back really well. I'm just going to grab another beer for us, Jesse.
Oh, that would be outstanding, yeah.
You can keep this rolling.
Sure. I reckon it was 2021 perhaps where I started noticing Adelaide and the way they played. And Tex Walker had a huge year that year. I think it was round 1 they beat the Cats at Adelaide Oval in a big upset.
What happened between the grand final side and that point?
So I don't know if Dylan can be heard, but he just asked me what happened between the grand final side and 2021. So you mean from a list point of view?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of players left the club. Thank you. A lot of players from the 2017 grand final. Well, I say a lot, but they're significant players. So Mitch McGovern was a significant player for Adelaide. That he's one of those players you kind of forget played at another club because he's just been at Carlton for so long. Charlie Cameron is also in that bracket, and Jake Lever. So there's a few players that you forget not only played for another club, but played in a grand final for another club.
I feel like the Crows have actually been a club over the years that have been really fucked over by the expansion clubs when they came in. They lost their centre half back, Nathan Bock. I don't know if that name means anything to you.
Yep.
Then they lost, who did they lose to the Giants? They lost somebody big there too.
Phil Davis.
Yes. Yeah, two
top 10 pick.
Two potentially generational key defenders.
Yeah.
Just absolutely screws you. And then you mentioned those guys that all kind of pissed off. I feel like they've just been that club.
They are actually an extremely resilient club because not only all of that, they also had a head coach murdered in the middle of the season.
I forgot about that.
And then not only I remember, that was crazy. I remember I was at the next game Adelaide played because it was at Subi Oval. But they made a grand final a year and a half after that. And I think have come out the other side pretty well. Look, they haven't played they haven't played finals at all since 2017, to be fair. So let's not exaggerate it, but I feel like they've played with a dignity and resilience that, certainly West Coast don't have.
Or North Melbourne.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a bit of the drop-off period was and now that they haven't played finals for quite a few years, it's almost a delayed reaction to some of those. We've seen it with clubs before, Essendon with the drug saga. Surely that there's definitely a relationship between that and the fact that they haven't played finals for almost 30 years now. It feels like it's and for the Crows, obviously, they had all of that stuff. They had the camp, they had the death of Phil Walsh, of course, as well. So I feel like there has to be some sort of a fallout from those things.
I feel like there was something else that happened at Adelaide, but perhaps we can be helped out in the comments there.
Yeah.
I feel like something significant. But, look, I mean, I said Fremantle were the first team to undergo a complete dismantling of their playing list. There was no smooth transition at all. And that was before Adelaide. But I did also forget about the Brisbane Lions, like the Go Home 5 2013 era.
Yeah.
That they were actually the first to really do it. And I guess in the modern game, it's just evidence that if you strip back your list relentlessly, it is going to take just about a decade to come out the other side. This has been 8 years for Adelaide. And I would say they've gone relatively well. Like it's not...
They're not even a bad example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's far worse examples. And perhaps this could be on the cards for Richmond as well, with all due respect.
If you imagine all of those teams that sort of cut post 2010, I'm thinking...
Brisbane Lions,
North Melbourne.
Yeah, North Melbourne. West Coast is doing it now. Adelaide Crows, Fremantle, St Kilda. To be fair...
Well, they definitely did after the successful period.
Like when Lyon left, which was 12.
They had significant issues going on behind the scenes with that playing list as well. Like their books were cooked.
Yeah. I was about to say it didn't go too bad for them. There's a spoon in there, and I don't remember the next time they made finals. I know they made them in 2020.
Well, you say you don't remember it going too bad for them. Do you remember Brendan Goddard playing for Essendon? They smashed them, and this is Essendon, who were not a successful side, and Brendan Goddard was crying on the post-game interview.
I think that's been that's been discussed this week.
Has it?
Yeah, like Cam Mooney does I don't know, it was in my algorithm like multiple times.
Yeah, right.
But continue, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that like when you say that they didn't bottom out that badly, like obviously that period, whatever that was, he was sort of, he was emotional and upset about the fact that they were where he saw St Kilda at, who he loved, and that's what got him to that point, right? So they must have been somewhere in the mire.
They definitely were. I just think West Coast losing a game by 171 points has really redefined what a bad team is to me.
100%. Like, I mean, like I've barely seen North Melbourne win a game for 5 years.
Yeah,
it feels like. I don't know if like, what have we won, 15 or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
15 games in 5 years, like that's crazy.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Like it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
A few comments coming through here. So the people who say their rebuild is done are kidding themselves. That's from BS. Is that from BS the people, or is that from
what context is this? That either way, that kind of leads to an interesting talk. This rebuild notion is a little bit not overused, but it's very loosely used. What do you define as a rebuild? When does it start? I think a rebuild starts when your club makes the decision to obviously replenish the list through the draft and prioritize youth and build towards a next core group. But
do you think a stipulation in there for that? Sorry to cut you off there, but
right.
Like it's when you start to move on players because of age.
Yeah. When it manifests in your list management strategy.
Yeah.
So moving on players, right? That. So for North, that probably happened when, Brent Harvey, Drew Petrie, was it like 4 players left? For West Coast, I would say it happened in 21. And this, I don't remember if we moved anyone on that year, but what we did do was decide, okay, we're going to hit the draft now. That is our main strategy now of sort of moving forward with this list. It just happened to be that we became the worst side in the competition in the middle of the year when we were a finals aspirant. So we finished 9th. Despite losing like 9 of our last 10 or something like that.
Right.
So for us, I'd say the rebuild starts in 21. But getting back to the question, because we got the criticism we haven't even started the rebuild, which I don't know how you can say that when we've had multiple. Well, we've had Harley Reid, all these Hewitt and that.
I think I guess the criticism I would suggest comes towards West Coast over maybe. Which is strange because like when you look at some of the teams that have held on to their established older players, it's actually worked out really well for them. But you guys held on to your older players and it just didn't work out because of the fact that they were so injury prone and they just couldn't get their bodies right. So it really that doubled down on the problem for you guys.
Yeah, I can defend that though. So I think what West Coast tried to do was emulate the Geelong model.
Yeah.
The Geelong model has been have a core group of established elite players, and maybe we didn't pound for pound match them on talent. Well, maybe we did. We'd have to have a separate conversation, but it was a pretty good core group. Josh Kennedy, McGovern, the like. And what Geelong do, if they've nursed those guys into their early mid-30s and develop role players around them and develop the system around them, and they've banked pretty heavily on that experienced group over time. And that goes back, Selwood, Ablett, into a previous sort of era for Geelong. For West Coast, half of that senior group turned out to be cooked all at the same time, and the other half all got injured at the same time.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of bad luck there. We had a strategy and it didn't pay off. But what comes next is we might get the criticism, oh, you could have traded those players. But I'll tell you what, nobody was trading for Elliot Yeo when he was spending 16 games on the sidelines for a year.
Yeah.
That extends to Shuey, that extends to Nat Nui. So we cooked ourselves, but at the same time, there wasn't so much shuffling of deck chairs on the Titanic that other people have suggested.
Yeah.
I don't think it was too conceivable that we could have traded players for high picks. And in any case, that's not really something that happens in the AFL. You've got to wait for the player to want to. So
I suppose the other element of just looking at that though would be, okay, so you sort of like you emulated that Geelong model. You'd seen that kind of be successful. But then I suppose I'm always critical of North Melbourne with this too. Like they do things that theoretically are like work and have worked for other clubs. But like and one of the things that North do a lot, and this is completely different, but it's another list management strategy, is we'll take players that have been previously high draft picks and we'll bring them into our club to try to make them better.
Yeah.
But we're not good at doing that. Like we clearly have shown over years and years and years that we don't sort of have that development program there to be able to sort of like reinvent these guys. And I suppose the criticism you could maybe throw at West Coast is, did you emulate a model that you couldn't actually couldn't follow through and execute it?
Absolutely. I mean, aside from the bad luck with injury, what Geelong also do is that they pluck guys from pick 57 in the draft and they turn them into either elite players or great system players.
Great, yeah.
Ollie Dempsey's. Max Holmes was picked 20,
Lawson
not a massively
Humphries.
late pick. Lawson Humphries.
But Max Holmes is that draft, that was a shite draft. And Max Holmes is probably the best player in that.
Yeah.
At pick 20.
That's what I mean. That was a great selection, and I'm sure you can think of more. West Coast, by contrast, throughout the same period where we're taking late picks because of the Tim Kelly deal, I don't know if we have a single late pick in that era to hang our hats on, and that's on us. That's on us.
Do you think how much
Obviously.
of that? Because I always this is so chicken or egg, and it always goes through my mind with North Melbourne, and I feel like Geelong
10 goals now.
That can't all be Geelong's recruiting team picking studs that are just always going to be that player. That has to be a little bit on the club as well, the environment that you're bringing them into. Like they must thrive at Geelong, and whereas when they go to West Coast, and that's what I was kind of saying about even with the older players, like they're obviously through that period, there was something happening in the club that wasn't contextually, when you look at what the other clubs were doing, you guys were either behind or not doing what the maximum of what you should have been doing.
Probably conservative. Yeah. I'm not saying West Coast is not free of blame, absolutely, but I'm more just sort of defending some things I've heard in the past.
Yeah, I think it's with all of these very historically terrible teams like North Melbourne and West Coast. I think like when I criticise them too, I'm not necessarily saying that a particular decision or something that they did was bad, but when you compare them to the rest of the teams in the competition, they did something wrong, didn't they? Because you don't win 15 games in 5 years for doing everything perfectly.
Absolutely. What was I going to say? Yeah, I was going to actually compare someone like a Premier League example of what someone like a Geelong or a Hawthorn or the very best clubs do, maybe even Sydney, not right now, but generally, is like, remember when Klopp came into Liverpool and he just signed a bunch of 30 million pound players that were okay.
Oh God!
But
I remember.
United probably wouldn't have signed him. I'm talking Salah, Firmino, and he created a system and he brought players in who can play that system and bring that energy. And culturally, obviously, they were very strong. That's what the best clubs do. And obviously, West Coast failed at that, but no one does it as good as Geelong, I would argue. Just about.
I think it relies on a really symbiotic relationship between all those football departments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everyone has to be so on the same page. The coach has to be really clear about the game style that they want. And then when they're devising the types of players that they need to bring in. And then something I've referenced a lot on this podcast, talking about how Sam Mitchell talks about players since COVID and the caps on the soft cap and the restrictions that clubs have had on that, and that changing recruiting philosophies to go after these players that are very self-driven. I think that's really interesting as well. And I think some clubs have probably adapted to that better as well. Like if you can bring in these guys that are going to go out of their way, like outside the program, they're going to put in all the work and almost do your job for you because you can't pay to actually have somebody educate them through that.
I would totally agree with that. The score is now 9-75, by the way. This is approaching the Port Adelaide game of last year that I earlier referenced. Psychological testing or the psychological element of recruiting is arguably the most important, but impossible to perfect because every person is different.
Yeah.
Anyone can interview. I can say anything in an interview.
Exactly. And I reckon something I've talked to people about, like talked to some recruiters about too, is like, how do you go about, with all the media and information that's out there now, draftees can kind of like do one thing and say another. You know what I mean? Like they can interview really well. They know what to say. They know all the things that they need to say to these recruiters to kind of make them stand out.
Absolutely.
It's just interesting. You almost have to really get inside their head, I suppose.
If someone's a people pleaser, they will probably say the things that they know others like to hear, even if it's not actually true to them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just very easy to mask that and say the right things, as you just said.
100%.
But evidently, some clubs do this a lot better than others.
I totally agree. Woody's just said in the chat, give Sydney another academy. It's clearly not working. Fair play. Saints fan too.
Yeah, or give them another North Melbourne father-son.
Oh, God.
Like Blakey.
Don't say that. That's the thing.
It's about to happen to Melbourne this year with Kalani White.
Well, do you reckon he chooses Gold Coast?
I have no idea. I just know that it's possible.
It is possible.
I don't know.
I know that it is possible, but yeah. North, that's what frustrates me with. See, most people get more frustrated with academies than they do with father-sons. I get more annoyed with the father-sons. I feel like that's a weird rule.
It is weird. I can't argue for it in a competitive fairness point of view, but I think I like the romance of it. The academies, particularly the northern academies, I'm not saying they're not a net positive for like the talent pool and stuff like that, but it's getting to the point with the Gold Coast Academy where they're churning out. How many top first round picks? You say maybe 3 this year? Ezekiel and Kalani White potentially
4. No, Kalani White won't be in there.
No.
Oh no, sorry. He would be the 4th. Sorry.
Okay.
No, so there's 3.
Yeah,
but they're in the top 10.
Yeah,
that's the thing. So it's Hewland, it's Patterson, and it's
Dylan Patterson, isn't it? Yeah,
Addensill. Did I say Addensill?
No, you didn't.
Yeah, they're the 3. So they're there. I mean, I don't think Addensill will be top 10. It'll be top 20, but still, I mean, you've had that. That's on the back of Walter, Reed, Graham, Rogers.
Rogers, yeah.
All inside the top 25.
Yeah, Lombard last year.
So
I think the solution there is what they're trying to do now. We'll see it in effect this year is make it harder for them to match.
Yeah.
And I don't have my head around how much better that's going to be for the or like in practicality, like how is it actually going to play out? But if we get to the point where Gold Coast can't match 4 first round picks because they finish first, then we're probably on the right track.
Yeah. Totally. I think they need to tidy up what you pay for these players across the board. Like, last year, because of the criticism of the father-son rule, they changed it so that rather than getting a 20% discount for points on a father-son, you get a 10% discount.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do you get a discount?
Yeah, I know.
Why do you get one at all? It's just absurd.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose, in the first conception of that rule, we didn't foresee how it was all going to play out. I mean, you'd have to say, it is a pretty weird state of affairs that we've had 2 Ashcrofts in the top 5. We've had Nick Dacos. We had Sam Darcy all in the last 4 years.
But that's what I'm saying.
That's absurd, though.
People seem to comment on this and they say, well, like, we worry about the academies because they're the ones that are actually significant. Like the father-son rule, it rarely happens and they're just, every now and then it's a nice, charming part of our game. The teams that have actually been successful from this, Collingwood won the flag in 2023. The Lions won the flag last year. None of the academy sides have got flags out of this.
That's a fair point.
I mean, you could argue Brisbane, except they haven't actually had many.
Yeah, that's right.
They actually haven't had many academy players, so it's hard to actually argue that. It's more, I think father-son is actually, what Geelong did back in the early 2000s where they first even changed the rule to bring father-sons into the first round of the draft because they were just back in the third round.
Yes, that's right.
They changed it because of them because they won flags. Like, it's significant. I think it's underrated how significant the father-son is for helping teams. I just think they need to make them pay more. I don't care if we want that in our game. I don't really care either way. But if we want, to have sons and daughters play for their father's teams, they should just have to pay at least market value for it.
Yeah, fair. I guess the point I was making, though, it is really weird that father-sons have populated the top 5 for so many years in a row because there's not really that strong a reason as to why they should be top prospects. Will Ashcroft and Levi Ashcroft are far more talented than Marcus Ashcroft was. Forgive me, I'm maybe just a little bit out of the age bracket there to have a good opinion of that. But Luke Darcy was a good player, but Sam Darcy's tracking to be better than him. Peter Dacos was an exciting, good small forward, whatever he was. I think he was a small forward. But Nick is comfortably better than him, I would have thought.
What I would say about that is, as a father-son, like, you have the information and the education around becoming a professional athlete is already there, right? From your parents. Probably like in a sport in AFL that is not as professional as some of the most professional sports around the world. Like, it's absolutely professional sport, but up against your peers, we don't have these like academies like in soccer where you're learning from a really young age. So being a father-son, being the child of a player that's actually played the game, you have access and an advantage, right?
I don't disagree. I just think
it is like, I agree with you. It's still quite ironic.
I think I do agree there's an advantage there. I don't know if there's such a ridiculous advantage though that it's a problem. But I mean, if your compromise is just that they need to pay a fairer price, then I'm not going to push back.
That's really all I'm saying there.
Yeah,
I just feel like if Brisbane win the premiership and Levi's there and he gets bid on at pick 5, just make pretty much remove any other draft capital that they can actually get, right? Or make them even if that kind of affects them the next year.
Yes.
So that they lose their first round for the next season because they've got that top end prospect. But to be able to get Ashcroft and then Sam Marshall came from the academy as well.
Yeah. I'd like it to make it so that it's not so likely that you'd miss out on your own father's son simply because you're too good. It would just mean that you'd have to pay a fair price.
Yeah, and you have to make that. I think make it difficult for them to make the decision, and then we'll see how loyal the clubs are to their father's sons anyway.
Great call. Yeah, I agree with that. And of course, this will happen right as West Coast has a slew of father sons coming up. Well, we have 2, and they're both called Banfield.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Charlie Banfield.
But it seems like Harper might even be better.
I haven't heard much about Harper.
And bottom age player. I think he's eligible next year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Charlie's looking decent.
Yeah, I think he's draftable talent from what I've read.
Yeah.
But we haven't really cashed in on that rule, I suppose, except Jake Waterman. But he's like one of the only ones.
Was Waterman a father son?
Alec Waterman was, Alec Waterman's his brother. Chris Waterman was a premiership player. Yeah. Right. And we had Jacob Brennan and Ben Cousins. We got through the father-son rule, but because of the weird waffle alignment, which no longer exists.
Interesting. I've just got some comments here.
Great.
So Jog On has said, Gen Z have way more access to information and talent, coaches, and are experiencing the benefit to the access of info. Yeah, fair play. And I think that's like across the board. I was probably just referencing it with these father-sons. Like if you look at Dacos, you look at the Ashcroft brothers as an example, they're not like athletically. I mean, Dacos is definitely athletically gifted. They're all athletically gifted to some level, but they're not. It's not as if that's the thing that's really carrying them. It's obviously their attention to detail.
Yes,
that I think is giving them an advantage over other players, and I think that probably comes from, on some level, their family and their dads who have been in the system. And he's kind of been, if you get that help and you know what to do, that gives you an advantage over other players.
I think there's some intangibles there, like competitive drive, which is probably, I have no idea if this is true, but possibly like hereditary a little bit. I don't know what the science says.
For sure.
And also the belief. And I know that's not locked in. Like someone could be born with or grow up to have like confidence issues regardless of who their father is. But I suppose there'd be a part of you that thinks, well, my dad did this. This is my path too.
100%. Give you the confidence to be able to do it. And that's, like we said before with the mental side of it, that's half the deal.
That's it. I'm going to take a powerful tinkle in your bathroom. If you
Go
don't
for
mind.
it.
So
I'm
I'll
going
leave you in the
to
comments.
power through these comments. We've got
Power through someone else.
We've got Drusa here. Druzy. All this talk is great, but have you guys noticed that Sydney are losing by 65 points at home at halftime? It's a very astute observation, Druzy. This is actually mental, and I'm talking to you down the camera here, Druzy, if you're listening at the moment, or watching, or both. But what we said about the Swans after the first couple of rounds of the season, the fact that they have no spine, they're completely spineless, and with the new coach, with all of the outs, they are really struggling in 2025. And I just think they're looking like they're destined for the bottom four at the moment. I can't see them finishing much higher than the bottom six. Jesse Detoli's just popped up on the screen, who they took in the draft with their first pick last season. I think he could bring something for them if they're able to get him in the team. Rogue Riot, Peter Dacos was a mid-forward, also kicked 97 goals in 1990. That's interesting, Rogue Riot. What's the relevance of that? Was that about the father-son? I mean, yeah. Oh! No, Peter was great. Peter was amazing. Yeah, fair. Okay, Jesse's talking to me from the bathroom here right now. Woody has said, from St Kilda's 2010 list, we would have missed out on Rewalt, Gilbert, Armitage, both the Clark brothers, and many more if Brizzy had the catchment then. I think Northern Academies just lock away talent. Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the sort of the discourse. And it is interesting with the players that you mentioned, because you're obviously talking there about players that have a connection to, like, still have a connection to football. I think where the academies work really well, both the NGAs and the Northern Academies, is bringing those new players into the game. So you're talking about those players that come from different backgrounds, you know, maybe parents that were born outside Australia. They probably weren't going to play football, and sometimes those academies can help to bring those players closer to the game, give them the education and the knowledge that they need to be able to get to the top level. And you don't want those people to be cut off from the game as well. If you want to grow the game nationally, you need those players to be coming through. So the academies are important, but then those examples that you're giving there, Woody, I agree with you in the sense that, you know, Nick Rewalt came from an AFL family. You wouldn't really want him to be caught up in an academy. Nick Blakey, the same with the Sydney Academy. There's not really any reason why a player like that should be able to be bid on by a Sydney Academy, in my opinion, even though I know he's a part of it. BS says Waterman was the final pick in the 2016 draft anyway, though. Yeah, okay. So, like, as far as, like, the quality of him, he wasn't, like, one of the top-end players. Just speaking about Waterman now, Jesse.
Yep.
BS has just said that, like, he was, like, the last player taken in the draft. So he wasn't, you know.
That seems to be a bit of a cultural thing, though, in the AFL. If a player's not rated in the first round, a father-son prospect, they seem to be let go by other clubs. I don't know if that's like
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think there becomes a point where it's strange. It's like if they're in the first round, essentially it's like, okay, we've got a bid on them here somewhere. And then pretty much everything outside of that, they barely.
Yeah. I don't know if that's looking after your relations between clubs, and that's something that exists in our league. I don't know about the NBA. I don't follow it. It doesn't seem to exist in the Premier League, but there's a lot of not wanting to screw over opposition clubs, and it's justified in my opinion, because you've probably got to deal with them, you know, the next trade period or the one after that. And you face them bidding on your academy players and stuff like that. So I suppose, yeah, as you said, if it's a first round prospect that people unanimously rate, then they'll keep those clubs honest. But past that, you see academy picks go quite late sometimes as well.
It's strange to me though, like with that, you know, you say, oh, yeah, you might have to deal with them and whatnot. But like, it'd be kind of better if they all just fucked each other over instead of all looked after each other.
The Dodoro effect.
Yeah. Like, well, I suppose what actually happens in reality is you don't want to be the team that fucks another team over, because then that ends up hurting just you. Even though you basically take a bullet. If you're the team that bids, you're taking a bullet for every other team, the 16 other teams that aren't involved in the...
Yeah, that's true. Exactly right. Although West Coast is and one of these clubs that has been very, I say generous, but very easy to deal with. Like Tim Kelly, that trade being done on day 2 of the trade period is an example, whereas normally those bigger name players will go quite late, but West Coast was obviously like, all right, have it all.
Yeah.
But I would argue that hasn't really proved too fruitful for us. Like I can't think of an example of when that's come around with good karma, to be honest.
I feel exactly the same as a North Melbourne supporter. Like, we don't want to bid because we don't want to make anybody unhappy.
Yeah, yeah.
Where do we get when does the good stuff start coming in?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, with that trade last year with pick 3, you guys certainly didn't get a win there, did you?
No, we didn't. However, I think from what I've read, and I read places like Big Footy, so you take it with a grain of salt, but I've heard some justification for that. Is Liam Baker managed by the same manager as Chad Warner?
I don't know, but...
Is it Connors? Might be Connors.
They're the big one, Connor Sports.
My impression, or what I've read, is that, and I hope that is factually correct, otherwise this whole point is useless, but I think West Coast sort of bent over backwards to accommodate Liam Baker, and that's also like a cultural decision West Coast have made. We look after the players we go for, fair enough. We're not the only ones to do that. But I think there was a case of keeping the managers happy and the agents happy. That is one of those things that doesn't get talked about a lot.
I actually think that could be more of an issue in our game than what I was talking about with the looking after clubs.
Mind you, Chad Warner re-signed. So.
So you got fucked over again. Oh dear. Liam Baker is represented by agent John Meeson, but what is the firm? Is what I wanted to
Connor
know.
Sports. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I certainly read that there's a connection there. I don't think that's.
I mean, Connor Sports, they have most players.
Yeah.
They have the largest amount of players in the pool. I think Hemisphere's up there as well as another one. But yeah, that's certainly something that I feel if you didn't let, for example, I think that was a big one with Dan Houston leaving Port Adelaide because of the players that they would want to be in for in the next couple of years. If they don't let Dan Houston leave and hold him to his contract, then Connor might screw them.
Yeah. I've heard it suggested that the player agents kind of rule the roost a little bit with player movement.
Do you think that's if that's, is a factual thing? What would you say? Would you say it's more leaning towards the clubs are more looking after each other, or do you think
I think it's a tactical decision by clubs to not piss off managers, and that's just the game, to be honest. There's not much you can do about that. But I mean, it doesn't really happen that much anymore. A contracted player being held to his contract. We've seen it happen, but that a player with 4 or 5 years left on his deal is a good chance to leave if he's requested a trade. And that could be a few reasons. It could be playing group cultural as well. You don't want to keep a player who doesn't want to be there, but it seems to be a more and more common thing. The contracts aren't really worth the paper they're written on to the club, really, except for, I guess, negotiating power. It's much better to trade a contracted player.
I'm trying to think of a player that wanted to... for some reason in my head, there's a Geelong player that wanted to leave.
And got held to it.
Like
Dunkley did for a year.
Oh, he did too.
Yeah. West Coast had Mitch Brown in 2012.
Don't remember that
much
one.
talked about trade. No, but we did.
One.
He had 2 years left. St Kilda thought they had him over the line, and West Coast just kept saying no.
One that we were talking about the other night was Devon Robertson at the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's every year going to leave for the West Coast.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think he got pretty close at the end of 23. And then I think I was saying this to you boys the other night, but I think his partner had some sort of anaphylaxis or something quite serious, and Brisbane sort of stood up and were great in that situation, and that's why Dev Robinson decided to stay at the Brisbane Lions. I don't remember the specifics, but
it's interesting. The reason some of that comes up for me as well, looking at some of the discourse in the mid-season draft, I thought was really interesting. So you had Essendon had pick 6 in the mid-season. Collingwood had pick 8, Gold Coast in between. Collingwood had done a large amount of homework on Archer May, key position player, playing in the waffle. Essendon hadn't even interviewed him until I think the day before the mid-season draft.
Right, yeah.
Collingwood had already told May to sit out of the last 2 waffle games, I think, and they told him to ask for an 18-month contract when nominating for the draft to try to, I guess, repel other teams from picking him up in the draft. Collingwood had then said, like, told a lot of media outlets that they were going to take someone from their VFL program, just to put just another little sneaky one out there. In the end, I think what's probably happened is Essendon are semi-keen on Archer May. They kind of figured out that Collingwood was sort of bullshitting. They've taken him at pick 6. Collingwood miss out. Collingwood never took anyone from their VFL program anyway, regardless. So, but it comes into that idea of sort of manipulating drafts, kind of like on a wider. A lot of people on Twitter and stuff like that. Not that Twitter's the best place to go for this kind of thing, but they were like saying that it is draft tampering. What would your opinion be on that?
I don't think that's draft tampering. I think that's gamesmanship. You're not compromising the draft. I think an example of draft tampering is players refusing to go to certain clubs. I mean, you can't refuse. Yeah. That's literally, you cannot. But you can certainly make it clear that you don't want to play for a club, and that will influence recruiting decisions. I think the 2022 draft was quite rife with that kind of thing, particularly that top 10. So that happens, and that is draft tampering, but what can you really do about it?
That's that's another question. The only thing I wanted to put to you on that, as far as like the gamesmanship element of it, like one thing that I started to think about when I was going through this was what would happen if, and how much does this happen is another question. So you're Collingwood and you tell Archer May, he might be a bad example because this never, and he got picked up, so whatever. But what if they told someone to sit out and like, we're trying to hide this guy? You even see it in the national draft. Like, I feel like the Sydney Swans Academy right now, they've got a top prospect, Max King. They're not hiding him. He's still playing football, but they're playing him very like deep in the forward line, and he's probably more of a midfielder. And I feel like they're doing it to hide his value a little bit. And apparently it does happen with players. They hold them back from playing certain games, so they play less football, and it just devalues them a little bit in the draft pool. What if this happened and they told a player to sit out, and then when it got around to pick 6, somebody else came up that they thought was going to go, and then they picked that guy, and then they didn't pick the guy at all. So they're telling, like, on one hand, they're telling someone to like sit out of competition so that other teams can't pick him, and then they didn't pick him at all. And how much has that happened in the past? I'm sure it has.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have no idea how much it's happened. But
Did I make sense?
No, I was with you. Yeah, I mean, you would say it's immoral and probably something that should be legislated against. Regulating it would be much harder.
Exactly. Difficult to prove. I mean, it's the same in the Prem and stuff again, like with tapping up. Like there's obviously rules around tapping players up, sending them messages, but like they do it right.
But look, if you piss off a prospect who has an agent, then that could easily blow up in your face. You know what I mean? Like if it only takes like a football club to, let's say, the Subiaco Lions saying, hey, we know that you told this player or us to keep this player away. Like
it'd go around.
It could blow up. And I do think that is probably against the spirit of the game. But outfoxing your opponents like Collingwood versus Essendon in that instance, I think that's within the realm of
I actually agree with you. I don't think there was anything.
Yeah, that's just like poker. I don't mind that.
I also think in like maybe that sort of stuff in the national draft is like the stakes are a little bit higher with that top end talent, but like fair play in the mid-season draft.
Yeah.
Like I think on average a mid-season draftee plays 6 AFL games, so highly unlikely that you're getting like the next Gary Ablett Senior.
Yeah, or the next John Newcombe.
Or the next John Newcombe or Sam Durham.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or the next Ryan Marrick. Marrick's decent.
Hutchinson. Oh, he was number one. He was number 2, was he?
Yeah, I like him, yeah.
I reckon he's probably, I'd say he's better than Marriage.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I think Marrick's the better pure footballer. Hutchinson's got so many attributes that probably make him a bit more dynamic, higher potential. But both of them are still finding a position at AFL level, but the raw product is good.
What's, before we get underway here in the second half, what's your like ceiling for Hutchinson, like position? And
I think gun tagger.
Okay.
Like his two-way running, his pace. But he does also have some untapped potential with his overhead game as a forward.
Yeah.
He kicked 5 goals on Waffle debut, and then we played him basically as a midfielder since.
Yeah, he's been wing really, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So I'd like to see us experiment. We could use that kind of presence in our midfield. But who knows, if we get another opportunity to play him as a mid-forward, I think there is some potential there.
So there's a bit of discourse around this in the chat here. Do you think Zach Butters will leave Port Adelaide? Not so much what we're talking about, but it's an interesting one.
Contracted for another year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
It would rip the heart out of Port Adelaide. I think the one thing that gives me some, not comfort, I don't know what the word is, but there's a lack of concern with where Port Adelaide are long term at the moment because of the quality of that young nucleus, particularly those midfielders. So Rosie, Butters, Horn-Francis, to be specific, plus some other decent talents. But you take Zach Butters, who is he the best out of that three? It's hard to actually say because at times all three of them have sort of looked like the best and then it rotates a little bit.
I feel like Butters is clearly better than Rosie. Mm-hmm. I think the argument is around Horn-Francis and the untapped potential there.
Yeah, but
clearly, like, who is right now? Who is the most important? It's Butters.
Yeah, that's right. But talk about rip the heart out of a club. I reckon if Butters left, so I think that is so important for Port Adelaide to try and hold on to. But yeah, he'll be a restricted free agent next year. So if this plays out in the worst case scenario, there is a chance, I suppose, he gets traded as a pre-agent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, was it Tom Morris that said the Bulldogs are the most likely?
Well, he grew up, again, the romantic side of it. He grew up, he's from Bacchus Marsh, Western Victoria.
Yeah.
Grew up supporting the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny with that one. Like, if I could think of all the teams in the competition that don't need a midfielder, like Western Bulldogs would be right up the top. Like, their midfield is stacked.
That's true, but you do have some players on the wrong side of 30 in that team too.
You do. But I feel like what they've uncovered this season with, Bont's still relatively young.
Yeah. It's more Libba and Treloar.
Libba and Treloar, yeah, for sure. But then they've what they've done with Richards and Fraser. I feel like that's kind of your insurance there. But yeah, you make a decent point there. Like,
too good to say no to.
Yeah, and Butters is a different type as well. So like, 100%, like you'd absolutely take it. Is there an argument though with Port Adelaide that, and we're getting pretty deep into Port Adelaide here from just that one question about Butters, but is there an argument because of their, like you said, that sort of congestion of talent in that midfield group and being young, that they could lose one of those guys and what they could invest back into other areas of the team could potentially make them better long term? Theoretically,
yes. If you're asking me, would I do it? Absolutely, I wouldn't do it. I think if you got a USP of a midfield like that, where Butters is potentially the best player in the well, maybe that's over-egging a little bit, but in the top handful of players in the competition, I don't think you give that up.
Yeah.
If it is indeed in their control.
Do you know what? Like, for me, this is just me personally. If you flipped that though, and you said Rosie was on the table, I'd look at that differently.
Captain though, heart and soul player, presumably.
Yeah, I just think Butters is like it's like the old Hawthorn team. Mitchell was the captain, but Hodge was really the captain.
Right, yeah. Yeah, tough one. I don't know. I still think I would play it conservative. I'm not...
Even not much, so you wouldn't trade either?
Nah, got players in their prime that are that good. I think it could be a real setback. And I think as well, like, what would that do for their trajectory as a club? Because it takes them from a team with a great nucleus that needs a bit of a rejig under a new coach, new game plan to set them forward into finals. If you start offloading some of their best talents in their prime, you put them probably in the category of rebuilding.
Yeah.
Dare I say it?
But are they not kind of rebuilding now anyway?
I mean, these are all pretty abstract terms with no real definitions, exactly. But in my head, they're not rebuilding, they're resetting.
Yeah.
Or will be forced to.
Or rebuilding on the run.
But they don't have their first rounder this year, do they? Or did they trade that?
Yeah, they traded it.
Was it Gold Coast?
So, yes. Yes, it was.
Yeah. Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Sydney with their second goal of the game, finally. The margin's cut to 56 points. What a crucial goal.
The big time Will Hayward, who I was just plotting. Slotting? Potting, that's the word.
Yeah.
Yes.
With some Bailey's Premium Potting Mix. Actually, that's a West Australian product.
What's that?
Bailey's Premium Potting Mix. I don't know if you got it here.
I'm not sure about that.
It's a Bunnings thing, sorry.
I'm not good with the home improvement side of life.
Yeah. It just reminded me of me assembling my bed, God.
Oh, no. IKEA number?
Nah, just fantastic furniture, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Not sponsoring us, but somebody could.
Ricky Cossey says, if the Crows win, they go third place. If they win.
I like how he's leaving himself a little bit on the fence there.
Yeah.
Going back...
You probably won, yeah.
Yeah, going back to the Butters to Bulldogs thing, would he be the best player ever traded to the Bulldogs? And you could almost open that up to smaller Victorian clubs, St Kilda, North Melbourne.
That's actually a really good. Yeah, okay.
Because that was the first reaction I had when Butters might go to the Western Bulldogs. I was like, when was the last time? Those clubs generally don't get their pick of the top talent.
They go after Dustin Martin.
Yeah.
And they end up with Hunter Clark. That didn't actually happen. But
no.
That's the sort of...
Yeah, or Andrew Gaff,
Jared
Polec.
Yeah, Jared Polec. Like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
That
is a fair disadvantage that those clubs have. But the Bulldogs, to be fair, have been a steadily competitive side for a long time now. Like the time between their last rebuild it's getting longer and longer, and it wasn't even that long.
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's like incredible recruiting.
Yeah.
And Bevo.
Yeah.
I think Bevo's like...
a Bevo stan? I
think Bevo's like so underrated. I think he's like probably the best coach in the league.
Wow.
And
I don't disagree that he's good.
Yeah, I really rate him. I think he always gets the best out of the side. Like he's at, like, obviously he's normally, again, potted from fans and whatnot for not picking the teams, but I think he's always been ahead of the curve. Like dropping players like Daniel and McRae, getting rid of them, bringing in like newer players, rejigging the list on the run. In that time, they've maybe underperformed a couple of times, but they've like kind of rebuilt on the run and have never bottomed out. So they haven't had to do anything hasty.
100%. I think there was when they draft Cooney, they won the wooden spoon that year. That's 05?
Yeah, that's way back.
Then there was a little bit of the 2010, I reckon they made their prelim. Then there was a little bit of irrelevance pretty much until Beveridge. There was a Brendan McCartney era. And somebody else I'm forgetting. But
that's banter era.
Yeah. Peter Rhodes. That was too long ago. Rodney Eade. Is the other one, yeah. But when you consider as well the 2016 Premiership team and the 2021 Grand Final team, there's actually a fair bit of list transition and time between those two Grand Finals. And look, they did fall out of the 8, but to be able to rebound that quickly with a pretty refreshed list, I think speaks 100%. To Beveridge's performance.
That's a little bit like what I was getting at earlier with the Sydney thing and like Longmire is in. He still made a Grand Final last year. I think we like fans have got a bit... hyperbolic about the fact that they've lost 2 Grand Finals by a large margin twice in quick succession, but like it's still an impressive effort. And I think with Bevo, like, yeah, as you said, there's definitely been like the fact that they've never finished top 4, that's clearly like a bit of a concern. But I don't know, I feel like Bevo, he's like one of those coaches, he's sort of like always looking, maybe to his detriment at times, like he's always looking big picture, even with the way that he plays.
Yeah.
The types of players that he wants in his team. And I don't know. I just think they've done, as a small Melbourne team, like they've done an incredible job.
Agreed.
They've always got like superstar, like as far as like promoting the club as well, like to have a play, like North Melbourne never end up with a player like Bontempelli.
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to take a risk. They took a risk on him in the draft.
It was a bit of a leap, a bit of a reach.
A reach,
from memory, yeah. Only a few picks, but still...
You have to do it though.
Yeah, I don't remember him being the expected pick for that pick.
And like we were talking about it the other night where like he wasn't like, he didn't have that defined position. Like he was a bit of a flanker type.
That's right.
Which sounds really odd now. But
yeah. When you said it, I was like, was he? And then I remembered, of course he was. Yeah, he wasn't a forward, he wasn't a midfielder.
Back flanker.
Yeah.
So, no, they've been awesome. Like they're making teams like the Saints and North Melbourne.
Yeah, they're setting a standard for what's possible. I mean, I suppose we throw Melbourne into that smaller club mix because they've got pretty much a very different story to the Bulldogs.
I had this conversation with Druzy on one of the earlier shows, and he was sort of he did the same thing, putting Melbourne. For me, I don't know if there's probably some truth in it, but I feel like the fact that they're so affluent and they have so many, like the benefactors around that club and the money that comes into that club would be significantly more than a Dogs.
Possibly, yeah. I tend to think of these things in membership numbers.
Membership numbers, yeah. Yeah, you're right probably in that sense.
To be fair, they have landed some big players, namely Jake Lever and Stephen May. Those were pretty big fish at the time.
Yep. I mean, like always pretty solid facilities and stuff like that.
That's right. They're probably an in-between club.
Yeah.
Rather than genuinely small market. But
Saints are an interesting one because they're definitely a small membership club. But I even them, I probably wouldn't put them in the same category as Dogs and North.
Okay.
And again, like they do have a few benefits of like just geographical location and stuff like that, being down in that sort of St Kilda, Elwood, sort of Brighton area.
You know what it is though, as much as anything, I think it's the ability to sell a future because the Brisbane Lions are in Brisbane and a relatively small club, like over the stretch. And we saw with the Voss era, the Go Home Five, nobody wanted to play for them. We were talking generally as a league, like, what do we do about Brisbane? Because when a small team goes down like that, it looked like a long way between where they were and getting into contention.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, in the lead up to them becoming good, Charlie Cameron requested a trade there. Lachie Neale requested a trade there. Dunkley was after they got good, but I feel like there's been some more quality trades of established players that went to join the Brisbane Lions, regardless of the fact that they're not in, playing at the MCG every week or a bunch of those players weren't even from that state.
No.
Yeah, like hardly any of them were Queenslanders. Charlie Cameron sort of was, even though he's drafted out of East Fremantle. Lachie Neale, South Australian.
I think the Dunkley one was it his partner or his...
That's true, yeah.
A family member, but yeah, I get you.
The overarching point is that players suddenly wanted to play for him. So perhaps it's about selling the belief in the future, which is something that North probably just hasn't quite got right.
Totally. Well, I think like if you can sort of hit upon an angle, you look at, probably the benchmark of that is the Cats, right? Like,
yes,
they've sort of like. We say it like it's an obvious thing, like, oh, yeah, they get, they sell a lifestyle down there. They had to do that, though. They had to be able to sell that lifestyle because, like, I wouldn't have wanted to go and live in Geelong.
No.
It's like a small...
Not if they were a shit team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if they were a rabble, like, you wouldn't be going there just for the lifestyle.
Yeah, but, like, it's marketing, right, isn't it? It's spin in some ways, but that's obviously worked. Like, they've been able to get Jeremy Cameron and... Bailey Smith and all these big names to go down there. And
it's an earned advantage as well as some natural advantage, geographical. But at Geelong, if you're a player with the opportunity to go to Geelong, you're not thinking, is this the right move for my career? You're thinking, possibly, am I good enough to crack this team?
Yeah.
And that's probably a fairly unique scenario there, depending on what player you are anyway. But it's about as much as you buying in and adding something to them as it is the other way around.
Do you think as well, like one of the things that they can sell is because of their prolonged success, pretty much like Bailey Smith, you're what was he, 24?
Same age as Butters and that. I think,
around that sort of age. So like
25.
Come here for 10 years, 10, 15 years, play footy here. Like we'll probably be contending for most of it and like we'll probably win something.
How many players have gone to Geelong and gotten better?
Yeah.
Most.
Exactly.
I thought Bailey Smith becoming a gun at Geelong was the most surefire thing ever.
I know. It was...
He's a good player, but...
It was a good player anyway, but it was completely predictable. I think people did forget about his quality at the Western Bulldogs for sure. Like, he's definitely got ball use issues.
Yeah.
Even still.
Played a little bit out of position as well and then did an ACL, so I think we were a bit removed from his best. But, 2021 final series.
You think about modern football and there's probably nothing more important than being able to high-intensity run for a long time. And that's like exactly what he does.
Yes.
There's nobody better than him at that.
Yeah.
Sydney are heating up here a little bit too.
A little bit. The margin's down to a warm 47 points.
Warm 47.
It was 57, sorry.
I think Drew's got in the comments here. Bevo ain't the best coach in the league. Come on now. Scott and McRae a rung above.
And Fagan.
Yeah, like fair call, but also,
I agree that he's a gun. I wouldn't say he's the best, but yeah.
I didn't necessarily say he is the best. I don't think I explicitly said he's the best coach in the league.
You may have done, but you can retract it.
I may have done. I just think he's right up. I think he's definitely underrated. He gets a lot of...
I would agree with that.
He gets knocked a lot. I know he's been in there for a long time, but...
Yeah.
like his first... his first, couple of seasons, he's probably looking at a similar record to a McRae, like wins a premiership really early.
Yeah, second season, I reckon.
Yeah, it was second season. And then Collingwood missed the finals the year after, right? And now they've sort of bounced back again. Like I know that's maybe a little bit quicker than... but I don't know. One of the things that impresses me about the Dogs consistently... McLean kicked that goal too. So what are we at now?
57 still. Oh, no, maybe 51.
51.
Yeah.
Jesus. Bevo, like he always seems to be able to sort of reinvent and come up with innovative things for them to win. Like right now, they're like breaking records for scoring from stoppage with the way that they basically move the ball from inside to out, get the ball in quickly. And they're doing that without having Sam Darcy, who I feel is... to play that game style, the main weapon around having that style of play. Yeah. But I don't know, they seem to be able to change personnel, do something really well, and then kind of like elevate it again with new personnel.
Yes. That
have different skills and those sorts of things. Like Richards comes into the midfield, Fraser comes into the midfield. They're more dynamic than the McRae types that were in there before. And it's I don't know, it's just an elevated version of what they were doing before, but he can keep reinventing that wheel.
For me, that's almost a litmus test of what is a genuinely good football side. And it's when you take out some of their best players and the production doesn't really change that much.
Yep.
I'm going to make my 19th West Coast reference for the evening. It's probably actually more like 23.
Double down.
But I bought grand final tickets in 2018 after round 9. But after round 8, we played GWS away and we had McGovern, Shuey, Nick Nat and someone else, maybe Cripps, all out. And we coasted to a 5-goal win. And I've never seen West Coast outside of that season win games easily without all their best players. And that was when it clicked for me. I was like, if we win next week, oh, thank you, mate. If we win next week, I am buying tickets to the grand final. And my call was right here. And the way that relates to this situation is, thank you, is Luke Beveridge being able to put in some fairly solid, the Bulldogs as a team have put in some pretty strong performances. Even if they didn't win all those games, they caught my eye regardless of whether or not they had Bontempelli or Treloar in particular.
Yeah, exactly. I mean...
And Jamara.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they've had so many players out, but I know, like, that they're doing it a little bit differently, I suppose, to the blueprint at the moment, which is very heavily, like, scoring from turnover. And they're sort of doing it from stoppage, but I almost rate that as well. It's like, okay, maybe they don't think that they have the personnel and the players to be able to dominate that turnover game. So they're like, we'll smash you at stoppage. They've always got Western Bulldogs through this Beveridge era. They've always had like the cleanest, fastest hands I've ever seen. The way that they can just flick the ball around.
Yeah.
I don't think any other team does that as well.
They had a bit of a reputation for throwing.
Yeah, they did.
Around that era, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, around the eras where they've been best, the years.
Again, like winners write the history, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So.
Yeah. Adelaide 13 goals for. Very efficient forward line, one would say.
Yeah.
This has been a very dominant performance, save for a bit of resistance from Sydney in this quarter. Adelaide haven't stopped scoring.
I'm just having a look at some of the numbers for this game just to have, incredibly, the disposals just before that little chain there from Adelaide were identical at 208 disposals apiece. That's absurd. Inside 50s are 43 to 30, so clearly Adelaide in front there.
Yeah.
But yeah, goal efficiency, 32%. Adelaide scoring goals from 32% of their entries, which is high. Swans only 16%. Clearances, Sydney are winning the clearances 36 to 27.
Druzy complimented me on my paw. Sorry, you're going to have to read that again. Or say what you said again.
Good paw, Jesse.
Yeah. Good amount of head on it.
Yes. What was I saying? About the stoppages. Oh, yeah, Sydney are winning the stoppages, Jesse.
Interesting.
By 9.
It's funny how that can happen. I suppose the clearance stat will not obviously tell you the quality of that clearance. It's any effective the first effective disposal from a stoppage.
Yes.
So that can still result in a goal.
That can still be absolute shite.
Yeah, you can handball to someone who gets caught holding the ball.
Exactly.
It won't matter. Or force another stoppage.
Kind of like what I was talking about with the Dogs though before. When they win a clearance, They win a clearance. They get good clearances.
Yeah.
Laddams. Why are they... Sorry, like that has to be said, doesn't it? Okay, we probably need to actually have a discussion on Sydney here. This is a disgusting performance. They're 50-odd points down after a slight resurgence. They're at home. Why is Peter Laddams tandeming with Brodie Grundy?
I'm going to make my 24th West Coast reference. But
this kind of reminds me.
It's relevant. It's relevant to this. I'm not taking the topic to West Coast. But you know how I sort of compared West Coast 2021 to where Sydney are now, in the sense that perhaps we didn't rate the depth, so we didn't see a lot of selection movement, which I actually don't know if that's true about Sydney. We're just commenting on this change, isn't it? But in amongst some good wins towards the back end of our era, we started throwing up some performances like this that were major red flags. So we lost to Sydney by 100 points while we were still in final. 2021 for us, yeah. We lost to we had two 95-point losses against Sydney and Geelong that year, and then we win our games at home, and we would sort of paper over the cracks. But this feels like Sydney's starting to tread in this territory. Sure, I'm sure the list demographic situation is different. There's a different story there, but in terms of the concerning performances, we've seen a bunch of these now from Sydney.
I agree with you. It even does go back into that Longmire era. I suppose that's like a little bit maybe what I was getting at with like the papering over the cracks thing, polishing a turd of Longmire. Like, I don't know, was he, because he'd been there for a long time, he was providing some stability that maybe is now appearing with a new coach, because he can't what's the word for it? Like, he's not able to sort of handle it, I suppose, as a new coach. That was a great goal by Neil Bullen, by the way. Woody just got in the chat for that. Druzy says, the Dogs right now seem to score easier than any other team. When they get on top, they're so hard to stop. Yeah.
Hawthorn versus the Bulldogs next week will be very interesting. My early thoughts are the Bulldogs have been comfortably better.
Who have they got, sorry?
Hawthorn.
Oh, gee. That's a rematch of that elimination final.
Yeah.
Where Hawthorn cleaned them up. Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
The narratives are sort of trending in opposite directions at the moment for those two clubs.
The Dogs have been everyone's second team this year too, haven't they? Like, everyone's really getting around them.
I've actually always kind of liked them.
So have I.
Despite I don't have a lot of Bulldogs viewers. I don't think they like my takes on the Bulldogs, but I've actually kind of always liked them. It's weird.
I feel like Western Bulldogs fans are probably like a bit more of a stick together fan base.
Possibly. Yeah, because they probably don't get a good run in the media or smaller club. When West Coast fans feel that about Victorian media, nobody cares about us, and then we hate the West Australian media.
Yeah.
Because it's too overblown. We just want a happy middle ground.
Yeah.
But the Bulldogs probably, there is a little bit of that. I mean, far be it for me to project onto others, but it feels like there's a little bit of an underdog club mentality there. And perhaps you're right, that manifests into a we stick together, don't say shit about us kind of.
Because I think there's like, amongst all this sort of like Vic bias talk, I think the smaller Victorian clubs actually, I feel like they probably get it worse than what the interstate clubs actually get it.
Okay.
I feel like I feel like that's the thing when like Western Australians and South Australians go big on those, the bias stuff. It's actually like more of a big club bias, right?
Yeah.
Like it's Collingwood, it's Carlton.
Yep.
Essendon, these sorts of teams.
Yeah. Do Essendon still qualify as a big club?
Did you see, Jordan Dawson just won himself a 50-metre penalty. He pointed for like the stand rule and then literally did a fist pump that he got the 50. Like, that was brutal.
Nice.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I think, are Essendon treading into territory of not being in a big club anymore? I'm being a little bit provocative with that because I think their membership numbers are pretty strong, which is one way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I see them as another club that is massively galvanised by those things that happen to them. With the drug saga and everything around that.
I guess every club does this, but I've definitely noticed about Essendon fans that they do cannibalise their own. Like, there will be this cognitive dissonance right now where Essendon fans, if there's any in the chat, will have hated what I just said.
Yes.
But as a generally speaking, they will be some of the most harsh in terms of giving feedback to their own club and the way it's run.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I suppose every club's like that.
That's exactly what. No, but there are supporters that
Carlton's like that.
Carlton's massively like that.
Yeah.
I feel like Collingwood are a little bit more pragmatic when it comes. Like they'll be a bit more like, fuck you for saying that about our club. But then when they're actually they won't be negative towards their club as much either.
Yeah,
they're a little bit more supportive.
I suppose that comes with success.
Yeah.
There's a trust that it will change.
Yes.
But Essendon's another club that I would look. I won't push too hard on the small club part because they have 16 premierships. So historically, they're a respected club, and they've got a lot. They're like deeply entrenched in football culture and history, but also would be one of those clubs that could never land a big fish anytime soon. That may change in 3 years. Who knows if Brad Scott is actually onto something here? But with all due respect, not once have I been concerned that Harley Reid is being chased by Essendon.
Yeah.
There is no way he wants to go play for them at this current point in time. Now, they're better than West Coast, but it's not a choice of Essendon or West Coast. It's a choice of West Coast, Geelong, Collingwood, Hawthorn, Essendon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Like, you don't fear a team that hasn't won a final. There is a lot going on here in this game as we're having this conversation, by the way. Rochelle,
What game?
Yeah, well, I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but Rochelle looked like he massively flopped there. Like, let me know in the comments if that actually happened. I don't know. There was a bit...
he's standing at a urinal.
Yeah. Rampy did put someone down. That might have been Rochelle, and then somebody else. Like, here we go. We're going to see it. So there's a bit going on off the ball. Rochelle then gets the free.
Oh, he did massively flop.
Yeah.
That was... Look at him laughing.
He's smiling. He's actually smiling. Walking off. Here's a good discussion.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got through what we're saying about Essendon, but I agree. Like, just to tie a knot on that, I do agree. I think talking about luring those big fish, you've got to actually have some runs on the board, right?
And equally, I also know that West Coast is not landing any big players and missed out on Chad Warner.
Nor are North Melbourne.
And we're not getting Bonds and Pally either. I am pragmatic about that. It's nothing personal, just calling it what it is.
100%. Do you think that what Rochelle did there, flopping, is that that's smart? That's good shithousery? Or are you the morality is more important?
I think it is a little bit immoral to do that. I think it looks bad, but it relies entirely on the umpires being able to tell when he's... it looked clear as day that was a flop.
It was one of the worst flops I've seen.
Yes, but it really depends where the umpire is. I think... I don't know where the umpire was standing, but it seemed like he should have seen that coming. I think flopping like that is lame, but then there's an argument for let the umpires do their job. If I'm the player... Yeah. I don't know, it's not something I would do, but...
Geez, gone down there pretty easy too.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
I mean, the most powerful thing the umpires can do is just stop paying that.
Yeah.
Those things. Same with the high tackle with Hawthorn. But then that's a really tough one. Adjudicating.
The high tackle is
it's a really tough one.
Absolutely. What happened there? I thought that was a free kick to Rochelle again.
There is a duty of care with the high tackle thing as well. Sure, they're drawing them. And my club certainly has been guilty of that in the past. They are drawing them.
The
Shuey and
Shuey
Scott Selwood as well did it around the same era.
Yep.
But Shuey's probably stands out because it won us a final.
Yeah.
But if you stop paying them and somebody gets really badly hurt, then it's a bad look too.
I feel like sport will always have those kind of what do you call it? When there's an opportunity to be able to get an advantage, the game will always, it's almost evolutionary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that I think David King talks about it a lot on his SEM program where, talking about if you can get, 2 goals a game from inside 50 free kicks to a small forward.
Oh, it goes a long way.
You've probably won the game.
Yeah.
So it's the advantage is big to be able to do that.
I think Hawthorn have won all but one free kick count this year. They had 7 of the last 8 last night.
The differential's huge
Yeah.
for them to the next highest.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are, I think, like when you go to inside 50 as well, it's like plus 15.
Yeah,
on the next best.
Yeah, because it's their smalls. But they're extremely far off the pace in terms of forward half
Sorry, did
ground
you just
balls.
see that through ball?
That was sick.
That Josh Rochelle just did to Ben Keys then.
If that ends up in a goal.
Oh my
yes.
God, that was disgusting.
Yeah, that was naughty. That has some stink lines on it. In a good way.
Woody, Harlem Globetrotter stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
By the way, Sam Flanders kicked a goal late in the game today off the outside of his right foot in the pouring rain that Mo Salah would have been proud of.
Really?
Yeah, look it up
I'll
later.
have to go and check that one out. I saw he kicked 3 today.
Yeah, there was some good
Flanders.
goals in this game, but I think that was goal of the day, to be honest. Considering the conditions, it was just unreal. It was sort of like that, but it went in right on a tight angle on the boundary.
Did he mean that? I mean, he definitely meant to go on the outside.
He meant that, I reckon.
Yeah, I think he did too. He is an ex-soccer player.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell. That was sick.
That was incredible. Rogue Wright says, stupid, sexy Flanders. Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I've missed some comments going back here.
Yeah.
Sydney is Nixie's old club. Correct. Fart explosion. Rogue Wright. Now, that's the Vic bias I subscribed for. That is a good call. Wookie says, as a Hawks supporter, I think we're going to get thumped again. That's the Dogs game. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Hawthorn are going to get thumped. I don't think I feel like Hawthorn are going to be fine for me.
It's weird to have a crushing loss to Port Adelaide on your rap sheet this year for Hawthorn.
Yes.
The score was like 79-0 or 78-0.
Yeah, how does that happen?
That is... Like, if West Coast did that, it would be a story, let alone a top 6 contender with Hawthorn.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? Like, I don't know. Like, I still feel pretty confident about the way Hawthorn play.
Yeah, yeah.
I think personnel is pretty good.
There's a lot of trust there with Sam Mitchell and the Hawthorn brand in general.
Yeah. I've said it a lot, and some people disagree with this, but like I feel, Dawson there, mismatch inside 450. Like Will Day is too big of their midfield is not good enough that you can hide not having a Will Day in the midfield. It's a little bit like Gulden for Sydney for their ball movement. Like it's too big of an out.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's Newcomb, and Warple has played some good footy through patches of his career. Well, maybe that's probably harsh, but like, he's not a role
being too nice to him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just remember periods where when genuinely was playing well. But then there's a few types that were high draft picks that need some time, and that's like Cam McKenzie, Josh Ward. It's actually amazing how little of this new evolution of Hawthorn has come from high draft picks.
I know.
It's just like Nick Watson,
McKenzie.
Yeah, and even then, like they'd probably not lose too much sleep if he was out of the team, right?
He's not ready.
Will Day was like pick 11 or pick 12. I want to say they finished ninth.
I think he was pick 13.
Right.
I'll do some research on that.
I know that because I did a video on this. Hawthorn finished ninth the year they got Will Day. So it's funny, like you might think, okay, Hawthorn have done their time at the bottom of the ladder, and this is the natural correction of high draft picks.
I agree with you.
It's the trades and the late drafting that they've done, and obviously game plan, culture, coaching, those things really cap it off.
I totally agree with you. I mean, you look at their best players.
Oh, Dylan Moore, pick 72 or 67, I think, or something. I don't know.
We'll go through that in a second. I'm just going.
James Sicily, horribly out of form at the moment, but over the stretch.
He's a gun.
Yeah. No.
Will Day pick 13.
13, there you go.
Yep.
Great selection, by the way, because that was another bolt and also a player that was not a fully formed midfielder when they drafted him.
This is actually this draft is a really good conversation. We've got about 50 seconds to go.
2019?
The third, 2019. So very interesting. Okay, so Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson at the top. Luke Jackson at 3.
Mm-hmm.
Lockie Ash at 4.
Mm-hmm.
See, he's like, this goes under the radar with a Sydney, right? They drafted Dylan Stevens at pick 5 in that draft. And then it goes Fisher McCasey, who leaves the game. Like, I feel like that's harsh on Adelaide.
Yes. Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
Leaves the game. Hayden Young, epic for Freo. Caleb Sarong, 8. Liam Henry, 9. So they went triple threat there, which essentially ends up being Young, Sarong, a miss, doesn't it?
Yes, you could if you do the algebra.
Yeah, it was Chera, wasn't it? But anyway.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Liam Henry. Don't remember what they got for him.
Tom Green at 10.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Flanders 11.
Stacks up now.
Keziah Pickett at 12.
That was a bolt too. To their credit, yeah. From memory, he sort of came from the clouds to be picked that high.
Right.
A great selection.
That's incredible. I'm just having a look what we've got there in that. Will Day, 13. Miles Bergman.
You know he and Miller Bergman are not brothers? Did that come up on this stream?
It did.
Okay, yes.
And I was like, no, that can't be right.
Yeah, I was like, they're clearly brothers. They have both called Bergman and they're from Big Country, both of them.
Yeah, and they're both blonde.
Yeah. I was like, are you serious?
But it's like they're from different towns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is. Cody Waitman, 15. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at Dylan Stevens and Fisher McCasey, like, obviously.
Another player who's injured for the Bulldogs too, right? Waitman?
Yes.
Is he injured? Yeah.
He's currently out. Cooper Stevens, pick 16.
So that was the pick we traded for Tim Kelly. So as a side note, that gets blown up way too much for being part of the reason we were here, but we can keep going.
Okay. Brody Kemp, pick 17 to Carlton.
That was my 24th Eagles reference.
Sam De Koning, pick 19.
Damn. Not bad.
It gets a little bit like I'm going down through it after that. Trent Rivers, pick 32. Charlie Comben, pick 31.
We could have had Rivers.
Josh Worrell, 28.
Damn.
There is a...
Cam Jamison, pick 49.
Yes.
Was it? Did I get the pick right?
Yes.
Wow. I
49.
need a girlfriend.
Hugo Ralph Smith, pick 46. Chad Warner, pick 39.
Yeah.
So how does Sydney pick Dylan Stevens at pick 5 and Chad Warner at pick 39?
It's arguably, premierships are arguably built on what you do with those later picks rather than the top picks.
For sure.
I mean, that's a pretty throwaway comment, but it's true though, I reckon.
My question to you here, who is the best player from this draft? I actually think this is a really difficult question.
It's a pretty even pool, to be honest. Like a lot of good players. We've got, to pick the guys who are genuinely good players. Rowell and Anderson are genuinely good players, I would say.
I'll just quickly ask the chat too, like put yours in.
Yes,
who do you think, who's your best player?
Great call.
And we'll kind of talk about this, but Jesse's going to go.
Luke Jackson, genuinely good player.
Yep.
Lockie Ash, good player. Is he genuinely good?
He actually is having a really good season this year.
I'd say he's good, not genuinely good.
Yes. Yep.
Just as a completely abstract, made up definitions. Hayden Young, genuinely good. Caleb Sarong, genuinely good. Tom Green, genuinely good.
There's two players in this draft pool for me that I think are potentially the two best players. It's Hayden Young and it's Will Day.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Their body issues are making me go, do you have to consider that in the ceiling of them?
Rowell also has some, to some extent, doesn't he? Or maybe he's over those.
I think he's over them now. Yeah. Like he had the knee.
Yeah, he did a knee against us in round 1, I reckon, 2021. That's going back some time, geez.
Right.
That's how you know you're getting old. Years just go by like that.
Okay, here's the argument. Here's the players. Woody says that Chad Warner and Sarong are the only AAs.
I forgot Chad Warner was coming. I would put Chad Warner right in the top of this bucket, which is not how a bucket is looked at.
He's definitely in the upper echelon. I'm going, okay, so like for me, interestingly, because Caleb Sarong is AA, he's not in the top bracket for me.
I understand.
I understand.
I've had 3 beers.
I understand.
I understand those words coming out of your mouth.
I think for me, it's out of Noah Anderson.
Okay.
Hayden Young.
Yeah.
Will Day. And Chad Warner.
Agreed, but I would also show some love to Luke Jackson because Drewsy's not here because of his
Yeah.
3 skin.
If he was, though, he'd be happy with Hayden Young.
Yeah. I don't disagree on Hayden Young, but Luke Jackson as well is just so far off being in the prime of his career for a tour.
That is correct. Yeah. I suppose that also comes into, like, that's what, do you go, what have they done so far?
Yeah.
Or do you still bring that potential into it a little bit as well?
Yeah.
That's where, like, I said Hayden Young and Will Day. Like, Will Day, agreeably, has just not been able to play enough football to be, like, considered the best player in this draft. Yeah. But I think he probably is. I think if I know that I'm getting... But I've just realised that I've forgotten one player that I actually think that should be in this conversation, and that's
Cooper
Pickett.
Stevens.
No. Yes, it's definitely Fisher McCase. No, it's Pickett.
Yeah,
Pickett's incredible.
I always have a little bit of a bias on position. We discussed this a little bit the other night when you came over.
Talk to us
sounded weird for some reason.
When you
I would always take a role goal midfielder over. Or a key position player over the small forward. But no denying he is the top tier.
Why is that, though?
I think that they're more valuable in building a premiership list. I think more premiership teams, if you run the diagnostics, comprise of more premiership midfielders and key position players. Elite midfielders. Like, it feels like you couldn't have a premiership team without at least a couple of role goal midfielders.
I agree with that. So I agree with that.
And I feel like that's less true of small forwards.
I feel, though, like a lot of teams build a list that has those rolled goal midfielders. But like for all the team, like every premiership team probably has to have a couple of those. But there's also a bunch of other teams that have really good midfields in the comp that don't do anything because their list is like disbalanced overall.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, again, like you look at Brisbane, having those like killers in front of the ball, Rayner, Bailey, Cameron, Lohman, like that was the thing for me that won them the premiership.
Yeah, that's a pretty good argument you've made. I just feel like it's probably the cream and cake argument, right? The age-old cream and cake argument. What comes first? No, I think it's to some extent it's true though. I think you can probably go further with an elite midfield who lacks polish than, say, a lot of polished players but no cake.
Are you saying polished or polish?
When you polish a cake, right?
Polish. Yeah. Was it polish? I heard polish players. Yeah,
that's why Myercheck is the first player I would take. I think he's Polish. He might not be. It could be Ukrainian.
Croatian.
Far out. Is there Kazitsky? No.
Kazitsky could be Polish.
I think that's Polish.
That could be like a Ukrainian-Polish hybrid.
Yes, I know though. Like, because it doesn't end in
Kolodjasny is Ukrainian.
Is it?
Yeah, but it's like Ukrainian-Polish, like borderland territory. Why are we talking about this?
Andrew Embley was Burmese.
We've diverted here.
Yeah.
There is plenty of conversation about this. Okay, so people saying Tom Green.
Yeah.
People saying Chad Warner. Rowell is such a gun, important cog in the machine. But yeah, Chad Warner actually. That's what Fart Explosion said.
Yeah.
Tom Green. And I'm taking Anderson.
Rowell is the cake. And then someone like a Cozzy Pickett is probably like the varnish that you put on the cake.
How much do you look at... yeah. How much do you look at with these guys? Like, if you do the kind of the game of like making 18 individual roles of like, okay, Matt Rowell, for example, he's like, to me, he like actually plays a portion of his game as being that kind of defensive mid. This year, like there's an argument he's probably broken away from that a little bit and he's more of just a getter. But like, he's probably the best at that role where he can like be a bit of a defensive cog in the midfield. He's also like a big clearance player. And he's got like a bit of a burst. So like I feel like if you're just operating on that like that one position inside the midfield, he's probably clear of anyone else that plays the role. Whereas like your Chad Warner midfielder, for example, like, I don't know, like you're really good on the ball midfielder, like an Anderson or a Warner, those types of players that use
Gulden,
the footy. Yeah, like there's probably more of them on some level. Like the difference between the best and the fifth best is not as, or it's not as big.
Okay.
Did that make any sense?
I think so. So if you're saying like Rao can be versatile within the midfield, is that what you mean? And play multiple roles like as a defensive mid and as a clearance mid? Or did I completely...
No.
Okay, I completely got that
more
wrong.
like usage. Like you're on the right track with what I'm saying, but like more of a usage thing. So like say Rao is playing that kind of, I don't know, let's break for point of conversation, breaking the midfield down into like, I don't know, you've kind of got like an accumulating type.
Yeah.
These vary in sizes too, so it's a bit complex.
What were the archetypes you came up with?
The strike.
I was going to say the strike.
The strike mid, which is like the offensive guy.
Yeah.
The defensive, there's always like a guy like high tackle numbers that's playing, usually a bigger body that's playing on offensive mids.
Joel Selwood had a lot of high tackle numbers.
Yeah. It can also just be like a bit more random.
High tackle. Thanks. Yeah.
Shit.
Continue.
We talked about this, me not getting the joke.
It was subtle.
Yeah, that was a good one. Like Dunkley would be the defensive mid in the Brisbane midfield. And then like Engine, which is like the guy that just plays like kind of max minutes in the midfield, doesn't spend like really any time forward, accumulator, like Will Ashcroft, good example, just high handball, that type of player. So what I'm saying then, if you just use the midfield as just a pure example, then figuring out those positions that you need and then drafting best in class. So maybe Rao, because of how much better he is at that position, that particular position, is there an advantage there? You know what I mean? Like, because he's better than Rowbottom or Drew or maybe not so much better than Dunkley. Is there like a bigger gap is what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, in the specific skill set for which he is in the team. The competitive advantage he provides. I get that. Yeah.
Per position.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good argument. What kind of player is Dacos? Is he the accumulator archetype or is he a strike?
See, I think Dacos he's both.
Yeah. That's why I asked. I was like, because he kind of does both, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's crossover. There's I feel like there's typical archetypes of those different ones, but then like people break the mold as well.
Yeah. I am going to go for a fourth archetype, which is the power tinkle. People who've watched my streams over the years will know that I have the bladder of a burly football because they have bladders.
I thought Sydney were going at goal then, which is odd. I'll jump into the comments while you're doing that, Jesse. Imagine the 2012, this is Wookie, imagine the 2012-2015 Hawks without a Hodge, Mitchell and Lewis. Still a great side, but so damaging without players like, not so damaging without players like that. I think that's what you meant. Interesting. I'm trying to reference what we were talking about at that time. Rogue Riot says Collingwood Smalls in 2023 as well. I might come down to what we were just talking about. Wiedering is Dutch. Fair. Totally fair. People can have multiple countries in their heritage. Absolutely. Max Hansen says, I went to the movies today and had a bubble tea and my full bottle of water. The pee after it ended was the longest continuous stream I've ever had in my life. Thanks for that, Max. So anyway, football. It's a good point. It's definitely a good point. I'm probably going to go after Druzy, to be honest. So what's the margin here right now? This game is an absolute mess for anyone that's watching. Let's have a bit of a peek at the stats. Joshua Shelley has kicked 3 goals from his 9 disposals. So he's been an absolute killer. Like that outside of the foot triangle ball from FIFA was absolutely ridiculous before. Heaney, he's been massive. What's Heaney had? 20 disposals and a goal. Pretty solid with a quarter to go from him. Clearances. Chad Warner's had 9 clearances in this game, 300 metres gained, 5 centre clearances as well. So as far as from it's like that for Sydney, that midfield group, that's an outrageous contested mark from Dawson as well. From that midfield group, like if you look at Heaney's numbers, you look at Warner's numbers, Grundy's been pretty good in the ruck as well. It's not as if they've really been beaten in there. The clearance numbers have been good, but they just feel like they're lacking composure and polish every time they get the ball. Like it doesn't matter if they get the ball in the defensive half, they get the ball at stoppage. They're just not using it well enough at the moment. And their forward line isn't good enough to be able to handle that ball coming in. Kareem says, who are the names to look for in the 2026 draft?
Harper Banfield.
Harper Banfield. Isn't he the...
He's the younger brother of Charlie. I don't know. I don't think he's necessarily in that top handful, but he's tracking well.
When you say who are the names to look for in the 2026 draft, that's why. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, bottom ages at the moment.
Dougie Cochran, South Australian keyback.
I thought he was a bottom.
Well, I heard his name like 2 years ago, so he can't be that far. I don't know what he does in his personal life, but
he's a baller. He's missing the national champs start tomorrow. He won't be a part of that because he has an injury.
I see. But I remember him being highlighted as a potential pick one.
Now Cochrane is a potential number one for the 2026 draft. I think Buick, Kobe Buick.
Is that Rowan Buick's son? Isn't there a Buick father-son?
Yes, he's a father-son. Yeah.
Is it Rowan Buick, Essendon?
No, it's Darren.
Darren Buick.
Darren Buick.
Okay, I forgot the first name. But I do remember a Buick playing for Essendon. That's how I know I'll just say me because it's rude to include you. But that's how I know I'm getting old. I remember the fathers playing.
No, I'm the same.
Yeah.
So you can include me. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I was actually going to say this isn't for the 2026 draft. This is for the 2027 draft. I've been going to some of the APS footy lately. There's a guy that plays for Carey Grammar. He's a bottom ager. Hugh Bond is his name. Intercept defender. Like, he is outrageous.
Really?
He's so friggin' good. Yeah, like he's dominating. Marks everything, and he's 2 years younger than everybody else. He's like a year 10, and the rest are in year 12.
Interesting.
Crazy.
I remember the hype on someone like a Jack Martin when he was like 16. They were saying, some of the just commentary, it was just big footy stuff like this kid is going to be seriously good. They were saying like he could be the most talented player we've ever seen. Like there was a mix of Stephen Hill and Lance Franklin.
Wow.
But I suppose he just never really hit those heights.
It is actually funny when you start to go from too far out.
Yeah.
It is a bit concerning.
That's a goal.
At times, I feel. Like if you're really, really good, like 2-3 years out from your draft, how many of those actually convert to being like the best player? I think this year the classic is Dyson Sharp.
Yes.
Who's been consistently the number one through all of his, like as in like performance wise.
If you got that physical advantage at that bottom age, it takes a shrewd recruiter to identify whether or not that's going to translate when they're at AFL level. Yeah, and sometimes it does, to be fair. Like Harley, I suppose he's still speculative in the sense that he's only 20, but like some kids have that dominance at junior level and then eventually they get it at AFL level as well.
Yeah. The thing is though, when you look at Harley and like Jason Horne-Francis is a good example of this.
Yeah.
The two things I think that they have over someone like a Dyson Sharp, they have strength, but they also have speed.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't really have that. So it's like he's mostly relying on strength.
Yeah.
Both Horne-Francis and Harley, they actually didn't get big numbers.
Yeah,
juniors. Like they were dominant in some of the things that they were doing.
Impact players, really.
Impact. It was like, 15, 20 touches a game.
Yeah. Sort
of numbers. Whereas like Dyson's sort of like 30 a game. Like in SANFL under 18s, he's absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he'll still be up there. But,
yeah.
It's interesting. I think Woody just said there that Nick Rewalt's first kid is coming. Hodge as well.
Yeah.
Hodge is in the 2026
the Lions
draft.
Academy.
Yes. Yeah, he's got a decision to make as well.
Yeah.
The Mitch Oliver effect, says Mitchell Smith. I actually know what he's talking about, but nobody else will. That's actually really funny. Good on Stiffy.
There's a legendary thread on Big Footy where somebody watched like an under-12s competition and said, watch out for this guy, Touk Miller. He's going to be a good player one day at 12. And he was Vic Metro captain.
I love that stuff.
I want to say pick 20. Maybe he was pick 28. I can't remember if it was. It was in the 20s, I want to say.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And then overperformed his draft number as well.
What did he come? Second in the Brownlow or something? Top 5 in the Brownlow?
Yeah, he's a gun.
Yeah. At 12, that's pretty good going. You'd claim that.
That's absurd. Yeah. And like, that's the thing. Like with my draft stuff, like I don't watch the kids. I pretty much start watching them as like briefly as bottom ages, but I'm just concentrating on the draft pool in front of me.
I think that's all you got to do as a content creator and as a footy fan, to be honest.
Yeah. I haven't seen them for the last 5 years or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, even recruiters don't start looking at these guys mostly till they're around like 15, 16.
There's got to be a higher number of players who have outstanding bottom age years. You always hear about it. Like you hear like Toomey's top 10 for the next year. And there's always like 2 or 3 that probably don't get picked up at all. Or like go late. It's just a lot can happen.
Even I think like the first on Gettable this year, Toomey did like a kind of preliminary top 10. He just like, I think he did it as like the players that are a chance for the number 1 pick, but it was also kind of like a top 10. And I would say that's changed significantly from that first one that he did at the beginning of the year even. So,
yeah. Kids just develop at different rates, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. It's such an advantage. Like in American sports, they have such an advantage being able to have a look at them for like another couple of years, essentially playing professionally. Like it's not professional, but it's college. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, there's an argument for that in AFL. I suppose the difference is like it's a big call for AFL prospects to spend ages at 19 and 20 potentially not going to uni and trying to focus on their footy. Like there's not enough incentive for them to take 2 years of their life to wait till they're like, let's say if the draft age is 20.
Yeah.
Like you would lose so much talent between that age of 18 to 20 because they're like, oh, I'm not sure. It seems smarter to go to uni or pick up a trade or whatever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Whereas at least there's the university scholarship system in America.
Yeah. So you're still like, you're doing something, like you're bettering yourself at the same time.
Yeah. Probably get a free ride as well in some of those cases.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of these kids get it anyway.
Yeah.
Until year 12, as far as like they get like they go to private schools and a lot of that's paid for sure. I'm actually going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, sure.
I was about to say I'm going to join you. That would be weird.
Be there in a minute. Just going to read some chats. As far as red flag performances go for Sydney, this is right up there with any of them. It's hard to match that Port Adelaide lost last year, but 86 points at home is territory that I don't think I've ever seen from this Sydney Swans group. Rogie says, following kids outside of their draft year is weird. Yeah, it's probably fair. A couple of players have been caught using burner accounts in lame attempts to boost their draft stocks. I think there was a cricketer, James Pattinson, that played a bit of test cricket for Australia that did this years ago. Michael Braun did it after his career. I love you, Brawny. 20 goals, 4 behinds. Wow, I actually didn't click that is the scoreline until you said it. That goes a long way to establishing the margin. I mean, this has been a dominant performance, but like if they kick 14 goals, 10, is that the equivalent? 24 scoring shots? Yeah, 14 goals, 10, then this is just a normal belting. Sad way to end Super Saturday. Yeah, I think the game that was originally peaked as the headline game for this week, when it was originally fixtured, Adelaide versus Sydney, has turned out to be the least entertaining. But that's good, I suppose. Keeps the competition fresh. I swear there was this weird trend between these two sides. Maybe we're going back 10, 15 years. But I swear there was a long trend of Adelaide and Sydney having games where the away team would always win. Jamie, get the statistics up. That's a Joe Rogan reference. But here... I actually just got that. Yeah, you got that? Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you, my friend. Cheers. That looks mysterious. What is it?
Some sort of a like IPA.
Oh, thank you very much. Too kind. IPA number. Oh, that's all right. Sorry. That's me getting excited to make my debut on the True Footy live stream for 2025. Warner snaps out of a stoppage. And the margin is cut to 85 points. This could be interesting. 20 goals for, someone pointed out.
What an absolute Saturday night stinker.
14 scoring shots to 24. So if you assume that both teams kick accurately, which is not the best, it's like oversimplifying it to just look at scoring shot accuracy, but 10 more scoring shots, that's probably more like a 40-point loss. But obviously comes down to how pressured are the kicks, where they're taking them from.
What's worrying, I feel like, is that Sydney have actually dominated around the ball as far as like getting their hands on and getting those clearances out. So then they've obviously opened themselves up almost by doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just intercepted and flown through. Like, I'll have a look at some of the... Like, Keane has had 14 intercept possessions.
Yeah, right.
Worrell's had 8. Cummings had 7. It's like all Adelaide players at the top.
Another tick for them here, the Crows, is that they've been lauded for their ability to score, but restricting the opposition has been not as consistent. They've done it before.
Yeah.
But,
like, this is a proper squeeze job.
Yeah, this is gross. This is just a comprehensive victory.
I was actually going to ask in the people listening along at the moment, is there any buffering? Are you experiencing any buffering? Because we've had that problem in the last couple of weeks. I feel like it's fixed. I've done a few things.
Yeah.
Mucked around with the stream settings. I've been good on my phone at this end. Let me know.
Yeah.
Have you had it running on yours?
No, I haven't. I've sort of paused it, but we haven't had any people coming in now. Thank you, guys.
Not once. No.
Yeah.
Yes.
You did it. Well done.
That's awesome.
Well done. This is an unbelievable production studio we've got going here, and our wonderful producer at the back there.
Producer Vic.
Producer Vic has been outstanding.
Big shout out.
Thank you once again.
And Gigi.
Oh yeah, Gigi has been wonderfully well behaved.
She has. So I guess, I don't know, I'm thinking like this game, there's kind of two big questions around it all. Does it, I don't know, like the main one being like, does it say more about where Sydney are at, or is it how good Adelaide are? That's what I'm sort of toying with at the moment.
I think it, on the basis that we knew Adelaide were pretty damn good already.
Yep.
I don't think we've learned anything that's elevated their legitimacy from this performance. That still remains to be seen, which should not be taken as a criticism or a backhanded compliment. We knew that they were pretty good.
Yep.
And I think the next step for them is, beating good teams away from home. Sydney are just not that at the moment. And we know Sydney had fallen into a hole, but it's the inability, in this case, it's certainly to come back from some of those bad performances. They were touched up by the Demons, who were admittedly in some good form, but this has been a comprehensive defeat at home.
Yep.
And then the question goes to where to from here. The list management strategy this season is kind of almost a little bit played out for them, given they've got 3 first-round potential picks. You got Max King.
I don't
know. You know better than myself.
So they've got Max King. They've got Noah Chamberlain, and they've got Lockie Carmichael. I don't think that Chamberlain and Carmichael will end up in the top 20.
Gotcha.
That's just my take on that.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about Max King.
Yep.
The other two will, in my opinion, they'll slide a little bit. Just not having the X factor. I mean, the champs will tell. Like they play tomorrow, the Allies.
Yeah.
So it's gonna
be a stacked Allies team.
Yeah.
Some of those players might get pushed out to flanks and
for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting what they do with Max King, because you've got guys like Dan Annable in the midfield. Like, he's going to play guts.
Is Yuland a genuine midfielder?
He can be.
Okay.
Yeah, he can be. He's short, so he's only 179.
Yeah.
Which is kind of going against him a little bit to play midfield. But he's just a weapon.
Mm.
He is. I'm starting to get... This happens to you when you do this. Like, you watch game after game, and he's been injured now for a long time, and you kind of forget about them.
Yeah.
But I was so hot on him last year. He's such a competitive animal. Gets in and under. Gulden on the outside, and I don't know, whoever's the most hard clearance player on the inside, think of them as well. So he's just awesome.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, diminutive, pretty small. So he's not like, you don't feel like you're kind of, I guess, drafting like a specimen.
Mm. Sydney do have their own pick, don't they?
Yes.
Let's see what that currently is.
Yes. I'll have a look at some of the comments.
Yeah.
Lads figured it out. We did.
Sydney currently hold a top 5 pick, acknowledging that will likely bounce down.
Yeah.
So they have a decision to make with that first rounder. They're going to probably want to trade it, but how far back, given the discounts? I suppose that's all to play out. It's pretty hard to speculate right now. I guess my question was, is there something they can do outside of just taking their academy picks this year
to start to get some more talent.
Do they move up?
Yeah.
Do they move that pick for an established player?
You know what's really intriguing about the Swans too? Last year, they had an academy player, not a really highly touted one. For some reason, his name's eluding me, but they actually passed on him.
Cochrane. Yeah,
Cochrane.
Went to
Yeah.
Collingwood, yeah.
Yeah. Rebounding defender.
Yeah.
Around, I guess the bid came around the 40s.
Yeah.
Maybe 50s. And yeah, they actually passed on him. So
Didn't they take Bice instead? Or am I, like, as a direct result of that? Or am I mixing that up?
So would it have been as a direct... They might have taken him with the next pick, which would sort of be the equivalent. I know sort of interestingly in that mix, I'm trying to remember back to it, but... Riak Andrew, Mac Andrews' brother, they took him, who was actually he could go to, like, Melbourne had the right to pick him.
Yeah.
So
there was a bit of that last year, wasn't there? Just claiming of other academy players.
Yeah, Gold Coast took Gold Coast took a Giants academy player too.
Okay, yeah.
It was a bit of that happening, but it will be interesting to see what clubs do that have like these multiple academy picks. Like, do they take them all? Do they preference like a couple at the top? I think that's a watch.
Absolutely. I think a sign that the academy system is being corrected a little bit is if, say, one of these northern clubs has 4 prospects, but they can't match a guy in the top 25. You know,
exactly.
That would be a good result for the competition.
100%. As far as what they could actually do, Keys is going to kick another goal. Like, what?
Wow, he's really opening doors for them.
I got that one.
Adelaide actually do have a good trend of trading in. I think actually you talked about, I think I'm recycling your content from the very stream we're on.
Don't stress.
But it was earlier this year of trading in players or discarded players.
Yes.
Ben Keys is possibly the best one off the top of my head.
Because Adelaide had been, like, most of the discourse around their list stuff was kind of like their screwing up of top picks.
Yeah.
And there's some truth in that. Like, I think the McCasey, is it Maxey or McCasey?
I actually don't know, but I think it's Kevin Sheehan is the guy who does the draft stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because there's Mark Sheehan as well.
Yeah, Kevin's the
draft
older draft guru.
I think on draft day he called him Mackesy, so I've stayed with that, but I can't really remember.
Fair play.
You also say Kernau, so...
I do. I got to work on that. Kernau. Now. It feels like it should be now.
Yeah, just think now you've got to stop. That's the way to remember it.
Yes, exactly. Rogue Wright just said Bice was already taken when Pies bid on Cochrane.
He's good for coming in with fact checks.
Yes.
I appreciate the True Footy audience for that. Always coming in with the goods. Thank you, Rogie.
You just forget some of those things.
Yeah, I can just throw shit out there and I know the audience will be able to correct me. It's like, all right, cool. And then I learn.
What was I going to say? You asked me about something. I thought you asked me something.
I actually don't recall. Oh, no, recycled players from Adelaide.
Yes.
And what are some other examples? Because as I said it, I couldn't think of another one. I don't know if I'd include Peatling. Wait, are we talking recycled players? Or are we talking about trade-ins?
Well, you could talk both.
It was me who brought it up, so I should have the answer.
So what I was saying is, like, yeah, incredible record with, I think I just meant any trade, but like there's also a number of like really good, just nothing picks that have turned out really well. Yeah. So,
Ben Keys is
Hinge.
Hinge. Yeah. Great example.
Hinge discarded.
Yep.
Taken.
Yep.
Keys discarded. Taken. You've got like the trading of Jordan Dawson. It feels like he was just a superstar when they got him.
But his evolution as a midfielder came at Adelaide, right?
100%.
So there's some credit to be taken.
He played an entire season and the first 6 games of another playing as a halfback / wing.
Yep.
He's always had that aerial ability to go in and be like an elite midfielder. He could be leading the Brownlow at the moment. So
he was so needed.
Yeah.
Like that transition of a player was so needed at Adelaide. I think as a point of difference in their midfield. I talk about it
with the Dogs, like with bringing in Richards and Fraser, getting rid of the Daniels and the McRaes. Like they did it too with with Laird and Crouch. Laird's not in the side tonight, but he's been managed apparently. But like he's sort of been moved to a less kind of needed position. They bring Dawson in. They bring Saligo, a bit more athleticism. So yeah, that's a couple more. Obviously, the ones from last year, like Cumming. I'll actually just have a look through who else they've got from that. So I want to say the other one that I was thinking of, and he's still a draftee, but I think he was a Cat B rookie, and it's Keane.
Okay, yeah.
Irish
was he
guy.
at Collingwood?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so that kind of counts.
Yeah, it does. It does, yeah.
Probably not recycled.
Did he get
Did he go
delisted
home?
and then picked up?
Did he go home?
He
yeah,
did.
so but that probably is a slightly different circumstance, but
yeah.
still playing his best footy at the Crows.
They've managed to get some A-grade players from trade and free agency that aren't like, we're not going and getting to use a soccer reference, like you're not going to get like £100 million player, like you're getting the £30 million player. You know what I mean?
That's
like
right.
They've done a lot of that.
Yeah. And they took Eddie Betts, a relatively no-name player, and turned him into that was just bait. That was pure bait.
That was bait.
Sam Jacobs, going back an entire generation of Adelaide Crows footballer. Went from Carlton to Adelaide.
Yes. I think that's probably it. Adelaide fans might be able to come in and... okay. So Rogue Riot, again, on the Keane.
Good man.
What do you say? He left us. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Was homesick, then a year later was back in Australia.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yep. I think he's like a really good... Like, obviously, he's not going to be a star, but he's like a really good role player.
Yeah. They needed that. Adelaide probably had a bit of a key back question mark for some time there.
Yeah, I think there's been with Adelaide this season, there's been a delayed reaction to how good their defence is. People didn't know coming into the season how good a defender Murray was. Worrell's gone to another level.
Yeah, reputation always lags performance.
Yeah, maybe that's the Vic Bias thing in Adelaide's case.
Yeah, well, I mean, I say Vic, but I'm probably part of that as well. I think it's just universally.
Braden Crocker just said Josh Jenkins.
Was it Essendon first? Then Adelaide, then Geelong?
I didn't even remember that one.
Yeah, I reckon it was at Essendon.
So, having a look at Adelaide's team, I'm going to read you some names.
Podsy Adley.
Pods.
Mind you, he was good at Geelong. Wait, did he?
He went Geelong to...
yes, but he was also recycled from Collingwood's... he never played a game for Collingwood.
Yeah, because he was taken from the VFL as a 28-year-old.
Yeah, that's probably not the example we're looking for, but it just came to mind. It's
interesting. I'm going to give you some lines here of the Adelaide players, and I want to as far as premiership credentials. I know you said before that you don't think that they're they need to get those away wins, but is their team good enough? Reading through some of the lines here. Okay, so followers: O'Brien, Rankin, Saligo, Dawson.
O'Brien, Rankin, Saligo, Dawson.
That's the midfield.
That's pretty damn good, I would say. I'd say it's good enough. Awesome. So it's almost the first thing it screams out to me is offensive punch.
Yep.
Is it balanced enough? But I mean, that's just purely on paper what you've written out.
Yeah, so it's not always like that, but that's kind of
It's relatively small, it's punchy, it's dynamic.
What do I think? I think Dawson, there's your big body and elite foot skills. He hasn't kicked the footy that well this year, but you know what I'm saying. And physicality.
The best players in the league always rank low for efficiency and clangers. Or the opposite. Buddy Franklin, when he kicked that 100-goal season, led the league in clangers that year.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and some of the best players, again, West Coast, number 25. Harley Reid, I wouldn't say he's our best player, but when he's on, he's your most talented player. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when he's on, he's a good barometer player, but he will always be our number one clanger player because he takes the game on, right?
Sure. It's like the number 10. Again, I keep going to soccer terms right now, but the attacking midfielder usually gives the ball away the most.
Exactly.
Plays the most decisive passes at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And obviously Dawson too, moving up the ground. The disposal efficiency goes down a little bit because he's in more cabbage than he is in the defensive half of the ground.
100%.
Yeah, so the balance of that, obviously Isaac Rankin's your strike.
Yes.
For sure. And then Saligo, I wouldn't call him a defensive midfielder, but he's very dynamic.
Yeah.
I would say. I would say a lot of other midfields don't. Yeah, overall with Rankin, Saligo, Dawson, a lot of other teams' midfields don't have that punch.
Yeah. Oh, agreed.
That athleticism. You're probably after that, you're running guys like Peatling, and he's that defensive guy.
Yeah, yeah.
He's going to be laying those.
Great addition.
Great addition.
West Coast really wanted him, and I can see why.
Yeah. It's tricky with a team like West Coast because if you bring a Peatling in, like clearly an upgrade, but you wouldn't want to give away too much for him.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah.
Where you're
but
at.
I mean, what did he cost? A future second?
Yeah.
Future second and maybe a future third going back. I think it was right in that Moneyball territory.
Would you though, like for example, would you give Tom Gross up for him?
I would have given up pick 46, which we took Tom Gross for, but I suppose that's the point of what you're asking. Yeah. I wouldn't. Because Tom Gross looks really good, but I would say that
if it was someone else, though.
Yeah, on average though, 46. The probability of 46 eventuating in a good player is relatively low.
So they're showing that like Josh Rochelle outside of the boo, like that was friggin' awesome.
That was awesome. One of the assists of the year, if that was such a thing.
Yeah, 100%. No. So their midfield, like that's solid, and then you've got your depth players, probably Berry, Luke Pedler. There's not like a lot of in that midfield. There's not a lot of accumulation, is there?
Yeah.
Like Dawson's really that. He's the guy that's probably getting 30. Saligo's probably mid-20s, that sort of player, and then Rankin's a little bit lower disposal.
Yeah. Well, maybe that. I actually don't know this to be a fact, but are they a low possession team relatively? Because Richmond, at their best, were a low possession team. West Coast has been a low possession team.
High possessions, there's definitely not a correlation between being a high possession team and a winning team.
Exactly. Like Richmond, that team, like I remember a game against Fremantle, they won by 10 goals and like 5 of the top 6 possession winners were Fremantle players.
Let's have a look at their
So we did say earlier, Adelaide and Sydney were pretty level on disposals. I remember you said that earlier.
They are the 8th best team in the comp, or highest team in the comp.
Well, that doesn't really support too much. Are you looking at differential?
No, just total.
Yeah,
just total.
Maybe go differential because that can tell a different story sometimes.
For sure.
I use that site. It's great.
Yeah, it's Wheelo ratings.
Yeah.
Shout out to the guys. Okay, so, differential, they are number 1.
That does not support my narrative at all.
We take that back. They are number 1.
But we were just talking about midfielders there, whereas possessions is not just about the midfield, naturally.
For sure. So, like, clearly from that, they have pretty low disposal games.
Honestly, halfback flankers are arguably the top ball winners these days. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. It's probably going to still be a midfielder, but yeah.
I agree. Like, let's have a look at the...
Like Lockie Whitfield or something like that. Or
he'd be the highest disposal.
Or Huuge. Like, Huuge would always have the most touches for Richmond.
Yeah, they were particularly... I feel like partly with the Richmond model too, like at the time they were doing that, they didn't have any big accumulating midfielders anyway.
No, they didn't, yeah.
Like it was system, it was definitely partly system, but it was also personnel.
Yeah. I know this is going to seem like a joke, but I think that's starting to manifest at West Coast as well. Because no one can get their hands on the footy.
Oh, because of...
but I actually do believe that is starting to be the case because there are games where we play well and we don't feature that highly in the stats at all. Got ya.
We've got a couple of comments coming through. I just want to go through before we go to the comments, like the disposals that we talked about. I'm gonna get you to guess. You guess Whitfield. It's not Whitfield.
What's the
averaging? Who's averaging the most disposals?
Is it a midfielder?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I actually would have thought Whitfield was a good chance.
He's third. So you were right.
Yeah. Some of the biggest ball pigs, Merritt comes to mind, but I feel like...
Merritt is 6th.
Okay, I was going to say, I feel like it wouldn't be Merritt because you wouldn't have said, guess who it is, if it was Merritt.
It's not that crazy.
Okay.
I'll give you a hint.
It's not Dacos.
No, it's not Dacos. He is 5th.
Yeah, he's had enough quiet games. Is it Jordan Dawson?
No.
I didn't really think so.
But he is not in the top 20.
Yeah, okay. That's embarrassing.
Again, probably supports like overall, Adelaide were low disposal compared to their...
Yeah.
Like it was...
That's true. They're third, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just they obviously have low disposal games.
Yeah.
I think that's because they're a little bit like more high stoppage. So less disposal chains.
Wouldn't low stoppage or wouldn't high stoppage result in more possessions?
Well, if there's a lot of repeat stoppages, stoppage, tackle, no possession, Like a lot of
the time gets sucked up.
Like there could be possession in that's not even disposal as well, like contested knock-ons and stuff like that.
I suppose the highest possession teams would be the ones that run through and use by hand and link up. So like the Bulldogs.
Yeah. Definitely handball, like high handball teams will be high disposal.
Yeah.
Like Essendon were high on the total disposal.
Okay.
Which I think they've changed a little bit this season too, like a bit less kick mark and a little bit more high handball.
Who is the top possession winner this year?
He plays for GWS.
And it's not Whitfield. So I'm thinking, is it Tom Green?
Yeah.
Okay.
31.5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's only 5 players in the competition now that average 30 touches.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
I feel like there used to be more.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, that's obviously a sign of things changing.
So, Tom Green, Bailey Smith, second, Lockie Whitfield, third.
Bailey Smith would have been a great shout. He has been a great fantasy selection this year.
Yes. Noah Anderson, fourth. Nick Dacos, fifth. But, it still is largely midfielders, but I do feel like the halfbacks are creeping up, like Bailey Dale's there.
Yeah.
Nasiah is there as well.
Yeah, 20 years ago, that would be unheard of.
There's an argument too. Zach Merritt is sixth. Like, there's an argument he's playing more halfback this season as well. Definitely more in an outside role. Bailey Smith's not like a full-time inside mid. He's sort of like a carrier as well.
Yeah.
We do have some comments. Braden Crocker says, Sid Draper, he asks a question, should Sid Draper be getting more of a crack?
Well, it's hard to argue that Adelaide are doing much wrong on the field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if Adelaide are winning games, then that is the priority, really. So the question of should an 18-year-old drafter be getting more games is probably a bit of a non-starter.
Do you know what's funny? If you had asked me this or told me at the beginning of the season we'd be at round 12 and Adelaide basically wouldn't have given Sid Draper a start. Like maybe he's had one, but he's pretty much been sub or out of the team for most weeks. I would have been like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
I'd assume that they were playing like Rory Laird and Matt Crouch in the midfield still, and I'd be really pissed off.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been like that.
No.
So I can't fault them for what they've actually done. Like with they've reinvented the wheel a different way without relying on him, and I think that's credit.
Has Rankin's midfield time jumped up this year, or was it last year?
He played midfield last year, but no, it's absolutely jumped up.
Yeah. So that'd be one part of the equation.
Yeah. Still, like he's still that guy that is like pushing forward for sure. And then they mix things up. And like there has been a time this season where they've had Crouch. He had an injury.
Yeah.
Crouch pretty much is like, for me, he's like a one and done midfielder. He'll get his hands on it, release someone.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting much else out of him.
Yeah.
But he's pretty good at winning the ball at stoppage.
I feel like Draper, in the role that he's going to play at AFL level long term, that role is too important to put an 18-year-old in when when things are going well.
Yeah.
But Adelaide are still finding their feet a little bit. It's not like it's Geelong who are there's a machine, like a win machine, generally speaking.
But it's a big difference between relying on Sid Draper to be that like that dynamic player running and Bailey Smith.
Yes,
who's like 24 or whatever.
That's right.
23.
Conversely, Murphy Reid, somewhat like an example for Fremantle, having a great season, but he's not taken the spot of one of their most important midfielders.
No.
So like the avenue into the team for him is much easier. Sid Draper, I think, is a jet. Like I was a big fan of him pre-draft, but he plays almost too important a role and maybe doesn't have the same versatility to play in a forward role.
For sure.
As to find another avenue into the team, if that makes sense.
I think Sid Draper has a Dacos-esque speed, and we were having this conversation the other night too, like that ability to run at angles. Sort of like change direction and sprint out of a stoppage at the same time. Draper's got that. Like his change of direction is incredible.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the same ball use by foot as Dacos, which would knock him down. But like
or Murphy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So could you play him forward off a half forward flank? Like maybe, but
at some point you think it's just better for their development to dominate the sandful? I suppose Draper was already playing Sandford, so it's probably less applicable to him. But to go to an example for the 26th time about my club, Is it better for Tom
Who do you
Gross?
go for again?
I'm a North Melbourne fan. Is it better for Tom Gross to rot on a half-forward flank at AFL level, or is it better for him to play midfield for 80 minutes or 90 minutes at waffle level?
It's. I think it's so club specific.
Yeah.
You'd have...
Oh, player specific too. I think Draper and Gross are just midfield. Well, maybe, I don't want to rule Gross out, but like maybe they're just midfielders for the time being.
Yeah.
And that forward craft.
I think as footy fans too, like we can get with like VFL and like the lower level, there's like right now, I think there's never been a bigger gap between like second or state league footy and the top level. And compared to other sports around the world too, like that's a big step down. Like it's not a proper professional league.
Yeah.
So there's definitely positives to it. I think like what Geelong have done really successfully with some of those players that we mentioned before, like Humphreys and that, like they gave them some time in the VFL. Dempsey, they were coming from like a long way back. But I do think that if they're a high draft pick, like their development's been pretty good, they think they've got the physicality to play in one of those positions. Like I think they can step straight into AFL. And I think for you'd have examples of where it's worked doing the VFL thing for a few years and some, so like you're right, it's like it's player, it's club, it's like how good the actual entire system is inside the club.
But I think Sam Lawler, if he was just an inside mid and didn't have the talent he does like forward of the ball, he wouldn't be having half the impact he is now. Like if he was just your Dyson Sharp, big-bodied midfielder,
100%.
It would be so much harder for him. But he does have that dual positionality and that talent forward of the ball, which is quite rare for a genuine midfielder.
I think that's also what recruiters actually consider. Like they actually consider that versatility when they're drafting somebody. Because if your pathway to the top level and pathway into the team, you've still got to consider that, right? Like you're trying to look at like the end result of what it's going to look like in 5, 6, 7 years. But if you go, well, yeah, okay, let's map out a bit of a pathway plan here for Sam Law that he can play a bit of half-forward flank. He can be a bit of a third tall because of his size and his height, his marking ability. It's way easier to do that than be, like you said, like a Sid Draper, like a Dyson Sharp. I'm trying to think of other ones. I mean, Ashcroft's doing pretty well this season.
But I would argue that they thrive on their tank as much as anything, which I don't know if guys like Harley or Sam Lawler have.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That they run and accumulate and they impact. That in itself, their players, I think we said this the other night, or I said this, if they don't rely on a contested game, that's where they can play early. And I think Will and Levi are not knocking their contested game, but they have the ability to run and impact over the course of a game.
It's that like loose ball versus hard ball discussion.
Yeah.
To be able to get that separation. Like that's, I reckon like Jagger was another one where in the 2024 draft, like he would have been one that could have come in and you look at him and you go like, okay, he's a bit of a stick as far as like his body shape, but he would have actually done really well at the top level from the get-go for me. Big tank, big endurance, like decent speed.
You a Jagger fan?
I am. I'm a Jagger fan. I wasn't for Carlton.
Okay.
I didn't think he was the player that Carlton should have drafted.
Thinking more player with a point of difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, I think
if you're in that top, like, or the later stages of what am I saying? A team that's sort of like looking to push into finals and beyond, you'd be looking more for point of difference, I'd say, rather than just accumulating midfielder.
Yeah, clearly they've gone in with a plan to say, okay, it's like we're getting into the, like sort of unexpectedly, we're getting into the top end of the draft. We haven't had like a top draft pick for a few years. So we're just going to take what we deem as like the best available mid at the pick that we have. But I think when like they like for all the work that they did and what they gave up to get rid of that pick, it felt like a fairly, like for me, it felt like a bit of a
vanilla.
Yeah, a bit vanilla for what they actually did in the end and like what they kind of needed. But
that's true. West Coast will get the criticism and that's fine. I'm not going to...
offside. They've actually drawn the line.
That's funny as. West Coast get the criticism for doing the trade and I don't argue against any of that. I get that. But not much has been said, or at least maybe it was just in WA, about what Carlton really did to get that pick. Because it was a subsequent or previous trade with Hawthorn.
I completely agree. Carlton at the time were completely exonerated. It was like they got it for nothing. Yeah. And West Coast gave up everything. But like it was like we didn't get anything. It's just you have our picks, basically. That's how it was kind of portrayed. I feel this year Carlton have copped a bit more criticism, some way unfairly, because Jagger Smith did his knee and has barely gotten to play, and the fact that they look like they're going to finish poorly on the ladder. So that's invested in that whole selection. So,
yeah, absolutely. There's a bit of a stink kicked up when your team's not performing well.
for sure. We've got Cardman in the chat.
Hey, Cardi.
Cardman22. I swear if we dish up a Sydney-like performance tomorrow, I give up. So who have the Saints got? They got the D's. I'm just going into that game right now.
The D's are not a good team to play right now.
No.
They have gone from being cooked to genuine finals quality.
I've been absolutely smashing the D's this year. I don't know if like Drew's listening still, but
really, he's a bit of a
he
D's
defends
fan.
them to the hill. He loves the D's.
You can't argue with 5 of their last 6.
No, they've been great. And I actually look at their team, and as much I've been critical of them because I feel like they should have more wins on the board for the top end players. I criticise them for the game style, for Goodwin's game style, and I also criticise them for the handling of those players like Clayton Oliver, Christian Petrarca. Like, could you have got some capital and stuff like that? We've sort of had that conversation all night, right? About do you rebuild? Do you get some capital for those kind of guys? But the thing that you've got to be excited about, if you're a D's fan, I'm thinking Rivers in the midfield, McVee, Langford, Lindsay. I mean, even Bowie. He looks pretty good off a halfback flank.
Windsor and Tholstrup were also high picks.
Windsor. Turner's even looked all right as a defender in the last couple of weeks as well. So I feel like for all of the off-field turmoil that it seems that they've had over the last couple of years, like they've sneakily built like a really strong list for the future.
They're one of those clubs that over a couple of years, I reckon, really targeted less but high-end picks.
Yeah.
In particular, I think it was 2013. Like, they trade like 12 and 20 for 7. I'm mixing that up a little bit.
2023?
Yeah, no, the pick was eventually 14 or 13 for Tholstrup. But they did some whack trade that was just purely to move up a couple of spots.
They definitely traded up, and they actually gave a lot to get Windsor.
Yeah, I'm fudging the details now a little bit, but yes, I remember that being true. They like really traded up hard and then took bolters.
Took who?
Bolters. Like players who probably
Bolter,
bolted.
sorry.
Not
gotcha.
a bolter, but like, yeah. I mean, bolters is just based on media perception, but yeah.
No, for sure. Like, I think as well, like Windsor was one of those players in that draft that he was high upside.
Yeah.
Compared to even the players that were above him who are a little bit more bankable. And they've done that over even if you look at the players that they took, like how did they did the trade with Essendon, didn't they, in 2024 to get up? Mm-hmm. Got Lindsay, got Langford.
Yeah, so they Essendon hold their first round of this year.
Yeah, which was looking terrible until they've gone on this little bit of a run.
Yeah. But
they have that kind of nice blend at the moment of youth and experience. Like, still got Petrarca's still playing pretty well. Yeah. Oliver's going okay.
Van Rooyen's another high-ish pick.
Yeah.
We haven't seen much of Jefferson. I don't have an opinion on him yet, but
Jeff, he's probably starting to look like a bit of a concern just because he's had opportunity, I guess, and hasn't been able to really take that next step. But overall, like most of those guys that they brought in the draft have been success stories.
Yeah.
And
that's true. I mean, Luke Jackson's kind of in that category as well, albeit not at this club, and Pickett may join him at Fremantle.
I forgot about
6 months' time. But over the last 5 drafts or 6 drafts, Pickett, Rivers, and Jackson that was an outstanding draft class.
Absolutely. And do you think Jackson will come back?
I don't think so.
You think it's just kind of...
Yeah. But I have no real insight. But there was another email. What? That's such a boomer thing to say. I read another email afterwards from the Herald Sun. There was another story that broke afterwards saying it's not true, so who knows? But I think it would be pretty brave to leave Fremantle right now.
Yes.
I think if you're already in Fremantle and from Western Australia.
Particularly for Melbourne, because even though all of the stuff we've just said, like Freo are in definitely a more stable position.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. Braden Crocker says, do you think at the time Essendon should have drafted Sartis?
22 draft. So the players that went after him were Cam McKenzie, in no particular order, Ruben Jinby, Philippou, Jai Clark.
Yeah, Jai Clark.
So Philippou is probably... wasn't that the one they were considering?
That's
Sartis and Philippou?
2022 draft.
Yes, 22, yep.
Draft AFL. Just let me I
want
to get the details right here.
Pretty sure Philippou cussed out Todoro or someone from Essendon saying, I hope you're happy with that pick. I'm paraphrasing. Because the rumour was Essendon were taking Philippou and they went Sartis.
And Philippou then, retrospectively was like...
I think on draft night, I think he went up to him because I think that it was the prevailing rumour. I might be fudging the details there a little bit, but I'm sure Philippou went cheekily.
I remember people saying that Philippou was very confident, a very confident guy.
Yeah. Yes. No, he definitely did say something to him. I'm sure it was in jest, but he said you're going to regret that or something like that.
I think it's really the Sartis example here.
Or Humphrey. Shit, that was the next pick.
Yeah, I reckon there's a real problem drafting a guy that high when there's other just looking at the midfielders here. I think Jai Clark's in the same category here as Sartis.
Mm-hmm.
They can't kick.
Yeah.
Most of these other guys in the draft are all really good ball users. Ashcroft, Sheasel, Wardlaw's a decent kick. I don't think he's really a high level kick, but some of the other things that he does, his power is really impressive. So I think you can overlook, but I don't know. Sartis is he's got athleticism. He can run. He's an accumulator. Kicks the ball really poorly.
Yeah.
Really poor by foot. Good handballer. So do you draft with a top 5 pick? There's a question do you draft a handballer basically?
What was his thing? His point of difference, was it explosive speed, Sartis?
People said that he was explosive.
Explosive, but also high endurance.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So he was a bit of a hybrid.
Yeah.
But he can't kick.
Yeah. I mean, there are some elite AFL players who aren't great kicks.
Yeah.
It's just to what extent can you hem that in?
I suppose talking about it before, Bailey Smith probably fits that category a little bit. He's never been a great kick.
Yeah. But there are some players that are just high risk, high reward. They can nail difficult kicks, but they can also flower bag out in the full.
Who is if you're just off the top of your head, who's the best kick in the AFL for you?
Shit, I don't know. Nazai's a pretty good kick.
We had this conversation on the stream the other day. I think he's the most aesthetic kick.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if the actual end result is always there.
Yeah.
But he takes off some difficult kicks. So that's probably... I think it's probably Gulden.
I was going to say Gulden.
Or Bontempelli.
I was also thinking Bontempelli. Yeah, there you go. I can't argue with that list.
Maybe Dacos.
Yes.
I do rate Dacos.
Yeah, because his accuracy is also penetration or ball velocity, as they call it.
Yeah.
How fast it moves towards the target. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting question, though, on Sartis. And I'm looking at this draft. Bailey Humphrey comes after him. That's a miss. You've missed Bailey Humphrey.
Oh, he plays for Fremantle. A miss.
Good Jesse. I don't think they would be spewing over Cam McKenzie.
No.
Who was, if I'm not oh no, he was an NGA, but you couldn't bid on them in the top.
St Kilda, I reckon.
McKenzie?
Yeah.
No, I think he was an NGA to Hawthorn.
No, I think it was St Kilda.
Oh, it was St Kilda. Okay.
I could be wrong, but
you couldn't bid anyway. Yes, you couldn't match the bid there.
Correct.
Jai Clark, you're definitely not worried about that. I think he's probably the worst in the top 10 of this draft. Jimby, I don't think he's spewing.
He's a good player, but he's a halfback flanker.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a midfielder, keep looking.
Yeah, the movement's not there. Philippou, you're spewing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, if it's a choice between Sartis and Philippou, and it reportedly was.
Yeah.
That doesn't look great at this point.
No. Nor does probably one of the biggest steals of this draft, which is Jasper Fletcher, who I'm just going down. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, father-son though, so is it really a steal?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Hewitt, I'd say, looks pretty good at 14. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
In a redraft, I would take him above a lot of those midfielders there.
I would take him...
Including
I think if Elijah Hewitt had better like fitness across this period, like we'd be speaking about him in that top group.
Yeah.
100%. I'll get through a couple more of these. We had the Sartist one. Andy Munro. Pooh has that American-style confidence. Yeah, 100%.
That's a real thing that's permeating the AFL generally with this new generation of footballers.
It is.
So, like, obviously it's been said of Hawthorn, Philippou's. That's true. I also see it with Hewitt. Like his celebrations. Okay. So he's had a lot of goals lately that were set shots, which allows him the opportunity to like walk towards the crowd. And he does these gestures, and I don't even really understand what they are sometimes. But
like Murphy Reid has been a big one for that too.
Yeah.
Like when he does those, like
Connor McDonald is a big one.
Oh, Connor McDonald.
Hawthorn, Ginnivan, like a lot of the Hawthorn boys.
Yeah. How do you feel about that being a? I was about to call you a boomer. You're not a boomer.
I'm a son of a boomer. My father was Mr. Boomer. I don't really care. It is a little bit cringe for me, but I'm not a hater. Put it that way.
Yeah.
But I was watching the front bar. My old man loves the front bar, and we chuck it on a lot of the time when I go to his house, and it is funny. I like that, like Gen X larrikin humour.
Yep.
But they showed a montage of Jason Dunstall like kicking like all the biggest moments in his career. And it was like a highlight reel when he hit 1,000 goals, when he won the grand final, and it was just like not a smile amongst it. Like he kicked 1,000 goals and he just walked back to his position.
Like, now this is weird.
Yeah, the field is like being run over with like people, and he just like doesn't even smile.
It's like it's such an Australian thing, isn't it? Like every time these guys do celebrate, it's like you better play well.
Yeah,
like that kind of attitude. It's like you don't enjoy the moment.
Yeah,
because if you don't win, like pretty much if you don't win the premiership, you can't enjoy any of this.
Yeah. I wonder if it's an NBA, a generation that's grown up watching the NBA a little bit. Mind you, in the NBA, you don't really celebrate that much, do you? Because you just run back to it.
No, the transition's too quick.
Yeah. But why did I say the NBA then?
I think there's
a bit of that in the Premier League.
They definitely still do it in the NBA. Like when they're running back, there's like some celebrations like while they're actually getting into defensive shape and stuff like that. Premier League's obviously big. I feel like that's partly because soccer it's such a big moment when you score.
Yeah.
Like the release isn't like the biggest in soccer. And NFL, you've just got all the time in the world to do whatever. You can do a dance, right?
Yeah.
So,
Just call a timeout.
No, I think it's like just that younger, like that's kind of the way that they live life, right? Like it's a bit sort of more in the moment.
Exposed to other sports, exposed to social media,
Exactly. Yeah. I think we'll wrap it up, Jesse, will we?
It has been a lengthy one.
Ooh.
One more.
Or in the championship. I've got a spreadsheet here. I'm thinking, though, off the top of my head, beside the obvious. I'm interested to see Kellaway play. He was really good in the South Australia, play the Allies tomorrow in the national champs. So Kellaway was really good in the warm-up game, in the trial game just recently.
Richmond father-son?
Richmond father-son.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see him. This is not answering your question at all, but the one that I'm really disappointed about is Jevon Philippou, brother of Matthias Philippou.
Oh, yeah.
He is in the South Australian squad. I think he's like on talent. He's in the top 20 of potentially even the top 10 of this draft. He broke his arm though, so he will not be playing, and he may not play any of the championships. So that's disappointing.
Rough.
There is a guy by the name of Schubert for South Australia, key position, 194 centimetre, key position forward, sort of / ruck. He was really good in the trial game as well. So he's another one. The Allies, probably most of them would be pretty well known, I would have thought. Like Euland's not going to play. He's still injured at the moment. I actually have to check their latest team as well because they've released some other names to it. But Max King, Chamberlain, Carmichael as well will be in the mix. Should we wrap it up? True Footy?
Like a Christmas present.
Like a Christmas present. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in once again to Footy from the Flat. We'll be back hopefully for the rest of the rounds for the season, at least one game a week. Jesse is living in Melbourne now, so, mate, you're going to be on. You're going to be smashing it.
I will, yeah. Well, hopefully. Yes, thank you for having me on your show, even though it's the True Footy channel. It's a great show you guys have put on here.
It's our show.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. It was really good to be back, guys, so thank you for tuning in. And yes, thank you again, Dylan.
Let's wrap it up.